Well, welcome back to the Smite Challengers Circuit. This time we're taking a trip into North America. This time around it's J Mac Tucker and Gormize. Before we hop in though, well, if Smite Pro is the YouTube channel that you can go to see all of the cool behind-the-scenes content, well, then you can go over to Smite VOD at youtube.com/SmiteVOD to miss any of the actual action out on the battleground that you may have missed over time, or if you just want to relive some of the greatest moments in Smite's history, once again, over to youtube.com/SmiteVOD. I'm joined here today with Gormizer as we bring you guys the Tiburones de Tijuana versus the Winter Dogs in our first NA matchup of today.
I'm excited to watch this one, man. I think that both of these teams have been showcased a lot. I mean, Tiburones have been in that weird lineup where, like, at least for, what was it, Phase 1, Phase 2, things looked really, really solid for them. We're coming a little bit more together this year, or I'm sorry, this phase now all of a sudden maybe aren't quite hitting the same strides, whereas Winter Dogs is starting to beat my expectations, so I'm excited to see what they have to offer today.
Yeah, and they got a big win over the Herculean Hooves last week, so that puts them currently at the #1 seed. Let's go ahead and take a look at the standings in the schedule to kind of see how everything lines out for these teams so far. As you saw earlier on, or if you missed it and want to go back and rewatch it, you got Elysium just lost to Goodnight Nick. They finally have been stripped of their undefeated rank, but now we're looking at Tiburones versus the Winter Dogs, and then Sturdy Artisans and Herculean Hooves will be the next matchup immediately after. Taking a look at the standings right through it. And with the Winter Dogs, with their win over the Herculean Hooves, they had a tied record. Now they get their win last week, puts them up at the top of the standings. Meanwhile, Tiburones are struggling to find some wins, sitting down at the 5th seed currently.
Yeah, and I think that's the big key right now, is looking at Tiburones, knowing that this is a team that has had success in the past, has been able to cause a lot of trouble for a lot of those top teams, but isn't right now, right? I mean, you have to look at them, see what they're going to be bringing today, as well as any changes that they might need to make to try and tackle, especially a team like Winter Dogs. You don't end up beating, at the time, the undefeated Herculean Hoofs with ease, and the fact that they're sitting up there with only one loss is a really, really big deal.
And it's no surprise with some of the names on this team. I mean, you have Wowie, Gamma, BennyQ, Kirmi, Aquarius.
It's a good squad.
These are some players who have been around the scene for a long time. Some former SPL prowess is there between Wowie, Aquarius, even I think BennyQ had a very short time, if I'm not mistaken, back on, I think it was like Flashpoint a long time ago, something with it. Either way, these guys have been around the scenes for such a long time. In fact, BennyQ has been showing a lot of prowess with Persephone after she's been finally back allowed in competitive play, so I would not be surprised if maybe we see a little bit of mid-lane focus for these teams.
And I think that's actually a good spot to put it right now when you look at the mid laner. Specifically, I think of Tiamat mainly as the top, but like you said, the Persephone. BennyQ has always been a wild card, and I think that BennyQ, especially on this team, has been a huge, huge component for their success. I also have to give a lot of shout-outs to Aquarius. There have been some games, and I will throw this Sobek simultaneously under the bus, but also raise it up on a pedestal, because some games this Sobek doesn't necessarily get a lot done, and some days Aquarius is the only reason his team is finding kills, and it's on this pick. So I'm actually really excited to watch them, because the way this team coalesces into a group is really where I think a lot of their strengths are. They've all got like individual talent and do pretty well on their own, but when they get into that team fight stage, the way they play together is just very impressive.
And Aquarius is one who can either define the meta by picking whatever he wants to say, this is what we're going to be starting now. So, yeah, Blink Artemis. He's even been, or even sometimes kind of molds himself to what the current meta is. Things like Kabrakan, who have been rising a lot. He had a great performance on that one last week. They're going up against the Sharks, and we talked about how Tiburones de Tijuana, they've been struggling to get some wins, even despite some of the big names for this team. Renjaru, Spreen, Cope, Heed thrown amongst into here. I mean, this is a tough team, even throwing Blugan in there as well. I mean, this is a big team, and it's a little surprising to see them so low in the standings.
Yeah, but they're in an okay spot. So the only reason I can word it that way is that they're 2-4. That it's not good, right? That's not where you want to be. But you are in a position where if you can buckle down now and start winning your sets going forward, you aren't out of that top-end contention. So you really can start pushing it. The problem is that you need to start now, and you have to go up against the Winter Dogs, making things a little more complicated for them. But like you said, a lot of players on this team that have so much competitive history and have done so well over the last 2 years that we've seen them in the SCC, but always coming up, it feels like, just shy of where they'd like to be and up against who they are. So I think this is a time for them to, again, get everything together, start turning around now. Admittedly, I don't know if you need to win this one. I haven't done the math for all of the end game for the SCC just yet, but like, this is one where as long as you can make it look competitive, I think you're in a good spot.
And one thing that this squad, and really I would say probably both these squads have, is a little bit of flexibility in their roster as far as roles that they've played. We saw in that highlight that Blugan and Coat Baby were able to swap between their support and jungle pickups here, so you never know where this roster is all going to fall down. We'll see where the gods line up for them as far as the picks and bans go as we get ready to hop into those here for game number 1, Gore. We talked a little bit about the mid lane, how Tiamat is still such a wide and probably still the number 1 pick about most of it, but with Benny Q in here, you highlighted, he's kind of a wild card. You never know where he's going to go.
And the thing is like, you know, I had mentioned, like, there's a lot of really cool top-end mages right now. Half the highlights, Benny Q's playing Merlin anyway. Like, so, you know, you can target it. You can take out your Hell, who can swap between solo and mid. You can take out your Tiamats. You can take out all of your high-end mages, Morgan Le Fays, Persephones. You could go all 5 bans over there. He's still going to be comfortable. So you have to figure out something else about it, and I think that's going to be the way that Tiburones have to go, is just take away the quote-unquote meta bans right here at the very beginning, then start to shift it, and how can you counter it? Okay, if Benny's going to play this, or if Wowie's going to play this, we can play these gods that help deal with that.
Well, as the first bans come through, it is Odin, Serket, and Osiris. Meanwhile, on the flip side of it, it will be Hell, RTO, and Yamoja. RTO has been on the rise a lot recently, kind of that quote-unquote magical King Arthur version of it. Definitely an annoying god to deal with coming out of Soul. I think it's the best way to put it. No matter whether she's good or bad, at any point, no matter which role you see her in, no matter how she builds, it's just an annoying god to deal with. It's one you just kind of have to take away at this point.
Yeah, and honestly, it is that, like, that awkward juggle. Right now, it feels like there's just so much worth banning, so much worth getting rid of, that you get 6 bans. I'd argue the weakest on that screen has to be the Serket of all 6 of them, like, of everybody that we've seen. And still, that's a pretty decent ban when you look at the way the meta has been going.
Serket being the weakest, that's a weird one to say, is that Serket is the weakest ban out of the 6.
But it's because, like, you still get Tiamat, you still get Raijin going through. Like, it just feels like there's so much to try and take care. And that's just 2 mids. There's still, you know, you had mentioned it, but, like, your Persephone that exists, your Morgan Le Fay that exists. Not going to be seen this game because 2 other incredible mid laners available. But then all of the hunters that we've seen that have been dominating lately, as well as these solo laners, the Cerberus, in my mind, specifically, because he has been the one on the rise, maybe right behind that RDO as someone that can control the game.
It's been nothing but magical so far picked up here. Tiamat, Osiris, or not Osiris, Tiamat, Cerberus, Ares, and a Raijin Terra. Now an Artemis to kind of break the magical gap that's been brought here, so finally getting a Hunter on the board and start getting one of those big carries. But 2 of the frontliners for Winter Dogs established, and we'll call Tiamat maybe a pseudo frontline. She likes to act like a frontliner when you get to that later stage of the game and get your 6 items online. But how are you feeling about these three picks so far on each side?
Honestly, I love, like everything that Winter Dogs has feels really solid to me because it's going to be very controlling. I mean, the Ares, like, stopping Terra from dashing, stopping Raijin from dashing. You can go ahead and assume Tiburones, like, if you want a good jungler, they're probably also going to have some sort of leap or dash or jump something in their kit that Ares is going to help control, so that's really good in that 3v3. You had just mentioned it, but Tiamat, after a certain point in the game, doesn't really care about what you have to say about her. And then you get the Cerberus as well. It just feels like a really good top 3, but Artemis, Terra, Raijin in the right combination can be very devastating.
Where's Gilgamesh?
Oh, yeah.
Where's Gilgamesh? I just looked at all of these and noticed that Gilgamesh has not been looked at just yet. There's still potential. We could get a 9th or 10th pick. There he is. 9th pick Gilgamesh. What a world we're living in the SCC when you can 9th pick a Gilgamesh of all things.
You said that and my brain fast-forwarded to, like, next patch where I'm like, well, yeah, like, I don't know. He's probably, like, maybe not going to get picked up too much. I don't know. We'll have to see. I think Assassins are going to be on the rise again. Then it was like, no, this isn't that patch yet. Like, that hasn't dropped. It's not live. Nobody's been able to play on it. That's a peculiar place to be in, and I guess maybe speaks more to Tiburones. I feel like, especially when you're looking at, once Ares gets locked in, that's where things get really awkward for you, because you're like, oh man, what do we pick into that can, like, function well in the jungle? I don't know that Ratatoskr necessarily does it better into it than something like a Gilgamesh would do, but I do think it does play into the comp pretty well. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
And it's definitely a signature pick for Coat Baby as well. He loves going back to this pick. I think that's why we see a Thanatos Camazotz of all things banned away. That's just what Coat Baby loves to play through it. And a Jormungandr to kind of round this one out. We haven't seen him very much. Let's see where everything falls into place here for game number 1. Winter Dogs and Tiburones going out here, the number 1 and number 5 seed respectively. And I'm curious how this Jormungandr is going to play out for solo. We haven't seen him very much. Kind of, what's this, what's up with this Jormungandr? Where's he just kind of come from recently?
Honestly, He's just, it's this weird meta, and like if you roll back 2 years, 3 years now, you can go back and watch Jormungandr where he was picked up, and admittedly at those times he could win you games, but for a lot of it, it was, I'm not going to lose my lane. Like, nothing's going to go wrong, right? I'm going to be here, and then in late game I'm going to be impactful. And I think he's in a really similar spot as of right now. I mean, you're looking at what Cerberus is going to be providing. Are you looking at him soloing Jormungandr right now? No. But are you going to be looking at him late game and in a lot of these rotations because of what he can provide for the team? Absolutely. I think that's what Jormungandr does as well. Really good team presence, really good disruption because his ult is just so massive, similar to like a Cthulhu, where sometimes you just kind of get lost in the sauce, so much is going on around you. And so I think it's going to make things more interesting for him. I also really like his CC and somewhat damage output. Plus, up against like Tiamat minions, he knocks them out immediately because now it's just 2 hits. His breath, 2 hits is like the quickest thing in the world.
He's one of the better gods at dealing with things that need a certain amount of basic attacks. Kumbhakarna passive, Jormungandr's great up against it. Kabrakan walls, really good up against because he can break them. So he does have that nice little bit of nuance with him to kind of shut down some of those other more focal points for it. As we look down the board for relics, it's pretty much blinks and beads across the board, except for Heed, who's gone for the teleport on the Jormungandr, and starting with that Vampiric Shroud, and then looking towards, is he going to go for a Voidstone maybe for that first item there?
Honestly, I could see it. I mean, it's a little interesting to think of specifically for Jormungandr going towards it, but like it's this interesting spot where you're in because like I'm so used to seeing Warriors versus Guardians. Like the Guardian versus Guardian matchup's been a little while, and so that's where the builds start to shift. I wouldn't be surprised if both Aquarius and Heed end up going for any sort of not just like magical protections, magical power. Health is going to be very big for them. I'm also curious about item name Stone of Binding. Just because the CC, that's going to be more up Aquarius's alley. Just trying to get some of those prot shreds, especially knowing that it's a very like Guardian-heavy, tank-heavy composition on the other side from Tiburones. Having that shred early on from a really good stun could be pretty helpful.
Maybe it could work there for Heat as well. I mean, you get slow from the pools, you get the knock-up, you get your ultimate that's got a bunch of knock-ups and knock-arounds with it. So maybe who knows? Maybe Stone of Binding, maybe the Stone of Binding could go either way for them through it. But as far as the mid laners go, they both go for the Conduit Gem and that Lost Artifact as a start, so just some extra early damage plus a little bit of MP5 to make sure that they can stick around the waves just a little bit longer. As far as it goes, Cope is one to maybe make the first strike here towards solo lane, but Aquarius is a fairly tanky Cerberus, and knowing that maybe a little too much aggression for it, he'll walk back towards that tier 1 tower, so Cope will rotate over and not really find a whole lot. Instead, he'll have to go back up towards the blue buff and help Heed drop that one down.
Now, I'm interested to see this because as we just saw in the first set, right, you could slowly accrue along like a lead, but these two teams, up to this point, haven't played passive. And I want to say this, like, Winter Dogs is a team that will play, I'm going to give them till about level 5, and then things will start popping off for them. I think in the duo lane specifically, we have to keep our eyes on Gamma, having the blink once that ult comes up, especially if you know, they can tick to level 5 either just after Wowie gets his ult or at the exact same time, because then that combo becomes ridiculous. All you need is a good gank from Kirmi just prior to burn those beads, maybe force Rinjaro to feel awkward. Maybe same thing could be said for Sybil. Get someone's CC immunity down and out of there, and then all of a sudden Gamma becomes one of the best players on the map just in terms of what he can pull.
Kirmi looking at these mid camps, but will not be able to take those. And Sybil's got the walls ready to potentially take that Harpy, but very wisely the Winter Dogs pull that one out of the way of the wall so it can't be stolen away. So successful Harpy invade by them. And Spring will have to Thunder Crash away just because the Cyclone comes out from Benny Q. Very low aggression compared to what we normally see of these two teams. You were talking a little bit about it, where once that level 5 kind of hits across the board, I'd say especially with these junglers or in that duo lane, we should see some sparks flying.
But I like the proactive nature of it. Even like, it's so weird to say this sometimes, but like small Harpy steals where it's, in the grand scheme of experience, 25 minutes in, does that Harpy mean anything? Probably not. But as of right now, it's still worthwhile, and it shows aggression. Speaking of aggression, Cope's deep.
Cope is trying to go for a back Harpy invade potentially, but maybe in a little bit of danger. Kirmi leaps in and goes for the blink, gets an ultimate out of Cope, and immediately with that through the Cosmos, he'll be able to get out of danger. But Not sure exactly what he was doing in the back line, and Gamma gets caught out in the middle of a team fight in dual lane when Jaru strikes first blood. Snipes are good from Wowie. Needs a little bit more damage, but Kirby misses the target with the drop kick. Doesn't matter, he's still going through the wall from Sybil. Keeps Renjaru alive. Kirby unsuccessful in saving anybody or taking anyone down. It's first blood for the Sharks.
That might be the best case scenario for the Tiburones, just because even though Kirby's on that side of the map, drops the blink, drops the ult, drops a lot into Cope, doesn't get the kill onto Cope. So not only does Ratatoskr get out alive, Renjaru manages to turn a kill around aggressively onto the Ares. Didn't have to burn his beads either. Did use the ult, so maybe there's a little bit down now on the side of Renjaru, but Artemis with a kill, feeling slightly ahead and still has beads. You are feeling safe enough that you're going to be able to control this lane pretty well.
Especially because Gamma has now ticked over to level 5, so that's a easy no escape. He's going to need it. But, I mean, Renjaru does have ultimate now as well, so he's got, well, actually doesn't have it at the moment. It's currently on cooldown. But if he does have that, he has at least 2 forms of CC immunity to get himself out of those no escapes, whether it be with that Caledonian Boar or the Purification Beads. Meanwhile, Sybil is not so lucky. Doesn't have any CC immunity in that kit, so is susceptible to being pulled in by Gamma. But Gamma is just now making his rotation towards mid as BennyQ is kind of stuck here under this tier 1 tower.
And this is where things are going to be a little more interesting for me. When you look at it, specifically the Ratatoskr, realistically that's the only thing on the Tiburones, but their jungler, which is such a huge essence of their game, Rat is much more acclimated to these early game attacks, assaults. He hasn't necessarily been a whole part of this, and the only kill they were able to pick up was in duo, but I do think that it is one that is a little stronger. Terra may be the one that is next closest to like this early game, mid game area where they're going to be able to come online a lot sooner. A lot of what she provides is more of the CC. Late game, it's just trying to stay alive, make sure that your ult is going to have a big impact in the fight. So I want to see a little more out of Cope because I think Cope can change a lot over here. But I think that Winter Dogs scale incredibly well into the late game, and that makes me a little worried for Tiburones just because, in my mind, you've got that first blood. I want to start seeing it stack up into a little bit more. Go from 1,000 to 2,000 in the next couple of minutes, to 3,000 ideally by like that 15-minute mark. If you can get that kind of lead, you'll be able to control a lot of this game.
We were wondering where these solo lane builds were going to go to start out, and it will be Void Zone on the side of Heed, and a Genji's Guard for a first pickup for Aquarius. So not going for any kind of power early on, just making sure to get some magical defense to deal with Heed, and even deal with anything that may come his way. If Spreen decides to make a rotation very early, could have some extra protection for it, or could even be, hey, I want to make an impact a little bit earlier, so now I've got that protection so we can start making those dives against the mid laner. And Ratatouille first item for BennyQ. A lot of power.
Yeah, it is an expensive drop, but it is a lot of power. So, you know, it balances itself out, bringing you, what, 140 now that you're going to be able to pick up early on. Your Tiamat, again, you're not necessarily worried about what you're doing, I want to say before 12 minutes even. I think a little bit further on, it's going to start mattering to you. I think the bigger stat is that 10% pin. Again, something that's going to be very, very helpful. Let's say in like a 3v3 where you're going up against something like a Terra and maybe a little Ratatoskr as well. It's just going to be helpful overall for BennyQ to have this item online early. And I actually really like the Genji's Guard as well. You had mentioned that, but maintaining that cooldown. There we go. Words. Look, this is what happens when we take a week off, man.
Hey, look, we do words good sometimes. Other times it takes us a second to get
like
there.
Like 80-20.
Yeah, it's somewhere around there.
Definitely not the average I'm batting today. I've goofed up and flubbed up a lot of words. Either way, I really like the Genji's Guard because the cooldown that it can bring. Specifically for Cerberus. I think Cerberus is just so helpful. All of his abilities are just so nice. And so you have a good stun, you've got good damage, you've got a leap, and all of that being up a little more often, especially while providing you protections from who you're up against in lane as well as their mid laner. It's all a big win for Aquarius.
It's been rather quiet since that first blood has struck over on that left side. Doesn't mean that teams aren't trying to group up and maybe try and make some waves here. Kirmi rotates over towards mid. It's not going to do much. It's mostly just wave clearing. He finally has to use his ultimate. It goes a little aggressive for the first couple of ticks of it, and then we'll have the third one back for safety. And that's the beauty of the Jormungandr. You never know if he's going to be aggressive or if he's going to be defensive. Wow, he's going to have to be defensive. Through the Cosmos, catches the dash and not able to get up into the sky quick enough. Cope Baby able to get his first kill on the board.
That couldn't have been better timed for Cope, being able to get the knock-up while he's mid-dash. I mean, there was nothing Wowie could do about that. If he pops his beads, he's already up in the air. The knock-up's not going to get immune, and there was no CC afterwards. So I like the fact that Wowie holds on to that. Unfortunate for him that he's not able to get up into the ult. But great proactive play coming from Cope, as well as to get 2 kills now into the duo lane on Winter Dogs, slowing them down a little bit, and Rinjaru finally has what feels like a very secure lead, a full level up, maybe and then some over what Wowie's been able to pick up, and that's a great spot for your Artemis to be.
Bit of an odd track here for Heed's build slot. You know, Voidstone not completely out of the question for it, but going to a Jade Emperor's Crown, normally you would kind of see that more against those warriors if you're facing off against those in the solo lane. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but why are we kind of seeing it here in this at this point when he's going up against another Guardian?
Honestly, I'm thinking it's less to be about the lane matchup and more about the pivot that's going to be happening, right? When you start making those rotations and you're like, hey, normally I'm going up against a warrior. Well, they've still got Gilgamesh over there, right? They've still got Wowie. Like, so having it online is going to be helpful. Maybe not as helpful right now. The next couple of minutes are going to well, I mean, admittedly be the same thing in solo lane when you have 2 Guardians over there no matter what. They're going to look at each other. They're going to farm. One of them might even CC the other one for a little bit, but it's not going to be leading. No one's going to be under a threat of death on the right-hand side of the map unless a gank is going over there. And with a Gold Fury up, you can bet everyone's paying attention to the left side instead.
I was going to say one might throw an ult at the other, but Aquarius has no reason to because he can't really get anything from the ult. He can't pick up the Jormungandr. Have you actually seen the bottom of the Jormungandr model? What's actually under ground form?
It's just like
a
tube,
noodle,
right?
Yeah, it's just like a tube that kind of just hangs down, like wacky waving inflatable arm tube man. That's what he looks like down under the ground, as you can see through. And Heed back here, split, or I should say, proxy farming behind the towers in a little bit of danger, but over by the Gold Fury, Cope's the one who's in danger. When just Shamash drop through, Gamma with the flames will be enough to help take him down. 1 extra tick from the winds is more than enough damage through. Gamma tries to get to the back line, finds 2 with the ultimate, but not going to pull either of them in. Instead, he'll be the one getting stunned on the back end.
3 beads down on the side of the Tiburones, though. That's where the key really comes through. I think looking at that, plus you get a nice kill if you're Winter Dogs. Almost easy to glance over. Ratatoskr getting taken down is a good win for them, but burning 3 sets of beads, all pretty much at the same mark, just over 2 minutes as of right now. Cope Baby has 10 seconds on his duo lane, but that's the only difference. Makes it a lot easier for Gamma, as well as the rest of Winter Dogs, to put some pressure onto, let's say, a Gold Fury sometime in the near future, once that ult is back available, and Gamma's going to be able to dictate that team fight.
Man, I love seeing where Gilgamesh items pop up when you get your quest bonus for it. His was between Tier 1 and Tier 2 on the enemy's duo lane side. He walked all the way back there. Gets an Emerald Talisman out of it, so he gets a nice little bit for it. So he's going to get some magical defense if he decides to keep it. And as soon as I think that he decides to keep it, he sells it. So instead, he can finish his Crusher. Very mace-heavy build so far. Both a Jotun's Wrath and a Crusher for his first 2 items.
And I'm glad he did it, because I was trying to think of what item he would go. I mean, I guess
Bulwark.
Pestilence, actually, because there's a tear on the other
Pestilence,
side. Maybe could have been helpful, but yeah, like Bulwark, and like I'm just sitting back like, I don't know what I do with this item. Like, until I'm under threat, I'm not worried about it.
Maybe he's wishing he had a little bit of those magic protections. Drop kick misses both, just whiffs right in front of them, and Cope laughing at him, able to pick up his 2nd kill of the game and making sure to put Kirmi right back down. Now Aquarius under his own tower, dealing with the onslaught of breath attack there from Heed, but Tiburones now up 3 kills and about 2,000 gold to their name so far.
And that's a good lead for them. Again, I want to see them push it a little harder, but I say a little harder as in get a Gold Fury sometime in the next couple of minutes and you're golden.
No, the Fury is golden.
Well,
or are you golden because you take a Gold
Fury?
Well,
so like they get enough gold from the Gold Fury that they can then like thin it out and encrust themselves in it.
That's a weird way to say it.
I was trying to think. There's a much better term for it, but my brain would not give me anything.
What if they melt it down and then they like create like a what's the a mold? Like a golden mold of themselves.
There was like 3 different phrases that went through my mind, and I was very much hoping that you wouldn't say any of them, and I'm really glad you didn't. And I think we need to get away from this conversation because it's gonna come up, man.
It's gotta happen through.
Someone's gonna say it.
Gold Fury's still standing, nobody going for that. Instead, it's the Winter Dogs looking for something over towards this duo lane, but Rinjaru and Sybil are both so far back that they're not able to take anything. And instead, even though the vision is in favor of the Sharks, the Winter Dogs are the ones who want to pull that Gold Fury. down to half health. Sybil, Spreen, and Ren on the way. Sybil getting peppered with damage from Benny Q. Ultimate comes through. Winter Dogs do get the Gold Fury, but how will the fight go after Sybil dives in? Gamma trying to pull up anybody with the ultimate, finds only Sybil, and may trade out his life forward. Benny Q is falling low. Cope not able to get the final kill, able to be saved there by Aquarius, but he puts him down. The World Serpent crossing the map and taking down one.
Now Wowie has to go up into the sky, and he's looking for the snipes.
Kiermi is in danger. Spreen finds him under the winds, but Aquarius is able to trade out and put a double on the board for himself. Wowie caught in the middle and too much damage from Heat. That's a double kill for the solo laner.
Yeah, that went from worthwhile to nothing for the Winter Dogs. You get a single kill, 2 kills, and you lose all 4 of you. Already that's a bad trade. Yeah, you get the Gold Fury, maybe balances it out ultimately, but you end up maybe in the same spot you were before. 2K down, except you just showcased that, man, your team fight doesn't have a lot to offer to it. I mean, I saw the the ult from Gamma, where he was able to pick up, still burn some beads off of Spreen, off of Renjar. They also get rid of the Aegis. Those are 2 big wins, 2 big relics to go down. But they started that Fury once the beads came up. Like, I was watching the cooldown. Tiburones, it was like, as it said, 3, 2, 1 on the beads for Spreen and Renjaru. Then the Winter Dogs decided to jump on the Gold Fury. It just felt like a weird, mistimed opportunity for them. And just a good rotation and good control from Heed more than anything. Good damage from Spreen and Renjaru, but you just got this great, obtrusive presence in this Jormungandr that they didn't have any way to handle. You can't really peel for him if you're Aquarius outside of the stun, and it makes it so much more awkward to deal with.
And isn't that just the worst feeling in the world? Is you're the solo laners coming over and say, guys, Heat's coming through, Heat ultimate, and that's all you can say about it. It's just Heat used his ultimate, because there's nothing you can do except hope that you're a little bit faster than him, and hope that your juke boots are a little bit better than where he decides to click that mouse and drop that tick of the ultimate for it. But that puts 2 on the board for both Heat and Aquarius. They both managed to get a double kill in the midst of that fight, but Heat coming out on top with it, just out proccing over level 17, has a Witchblade online for himself, and a Brawler's Beatstick out of Cope Baby. A lot of Mace Tree items coming out here today for both these junglers.
And honestly, I like it. The Brawlers is the one that catches me a little more off guard, just because there's not as much intrinsic healing on the side of Winter Dogs, but you do have that Soul Gem picked up from Benny Q. It's going to help alleviate that pressure, that little... Even though it doesn't feel like a lot, it's enough healing that we've seen it not only accrue a ton over the game, but we've actually seen it save people's lives in a lot of circumstances. So I think being able to deal with that will be solid for them, and it lets them get aggressive.
Gamma under a little bit of danger here as Cope leaps from the tree, but not too much. He's got the tier 1 tower there to make sure to save his life for it. And I was just looking over across, just kind of down the board for it. I just realized that Sybil was sitting at 007 right now, the secret agent for themselves, the James Bond of the team. But the Sharks up 7-3 here at 17 minutes, and still potentially looking for more. Now up 3,000, almost 3,500 gold. So they've just been naturally getting a little bit more farm there. It was 2,500 after that Gold Fury, now an extra 1,000 gold since that time being. And the Winter Dogs, they're going to default to just going ahead and taking this Draugr camp away. And
I don't think we mentioned it, but I do know that Sybil, if I'm correct on it, is a permanent swap away from Bluegan as well. So something that so far looks pretty solid for them, right? I mean, if you're looking to try and turn it around, you're trying to beat the Winter Dogs, this is maybe the best case scenario for you if you're bringing in a quote-unquote new player as you look at it. And not to say that Sybil's new by any means, but at least new to the team for the Tiburones. And it's awesome to see how well they've meshed together. I think the Terra ult, especially during that last fight, and what I expect to be at least the next couple of fights as well, is going to be pivotal. Mifflin had mentioned it earlier in the first set, but if you can get it on whether it's your team or their team, it's a big win for you no matter what. You hit 3-4 people and you're happy with it. And I think Terra's in the perfect spot to be able to control that, especially with another Guardian on your team as well. Heat's going to be able to capitalize on that. And I think it just makes things a lot easier for them.
Heat is just being annoyed by Aquarius more than anything else. The slows, just making sure that he's constantly being berated by damage from Aquarius. He will make it over to the tier 1 towers for the time being, but Aquarius and Kiermi aren't going to let that one go for free. They'll get the World Serpent out of him and trade Guardian ult for Guardian ult here from the solo lane. And he not losing out on any of his relics either, so having that one down, not too bad for him.
I'm trying to think of a worse solo laner to have to play into if you're Kiermi and Aquarius. And, like, they had the damage. They could have killed Heed had Heed not had ult, but It's just so frustrating to get over there and throw all that you have at this this Yorm to have nothing happen.
Cope in the sky looking for someone. Gamma's got 2 with the ultimate, only pulls in Sybil. Cope will land in the backline, finding Gamma, and a return in the backline goes Spreen, trying to get away from the damage. Kirmi leaps back in, but it's already 1 down for the Winter Dogs as Gamma was taken out by Cope. And with that 1 kill, the Sharks are happy, and they're just going to back away.
I mean, this is what I wanted to see out of the Tiburones, and not just being able to get aggressive early on. I had called saying, like, get a good lead because the Winter Dogs scale well into the late game, but as of right now, you've got a decent experience lead. You've got 2 levels in mid, 3 levels over there for your carry. The only players that are even right now are the 2 solo laners, which, look, Aquarius, I love you, but solo Serb isn't going to hard carry a game no matter who's playing it. It doesn't matter if you're the best player in the world or not. You're going to end up just being a small impact and maybe some setup, but I don't know if it's enough.
Wow, he has nowhere to go. Heat and Sybil are just bullying this Hunter inside of his own purple buff at this point. He will fall down. Heat getting the credit for the kill. Even with Aquarius over here, not going to be enough to save his life. It'll be a Primal Fury pulled by Tiburones as they already got it down to half health, and no response from the Winter Dogs. There's no way they can get themselves in there safely, so they let that go. And instead, they might be looking towards this right side where Cope has been spotted out. BennyQ rotates over, throws out the Minotaur for a little bit of damage, puts Cope well under half health. A leap in. BennyQ may be going for the solo kill, but doesn't have enough damage to take him down. Cope just a little too slippery.
Honestly, this is one of those moments, especially because it's Ratatoxic. He didn't even use his ult there, which, admittedly, if Benny had been able to burn that, it would have made that absolutely worthwhile. Either the ult or the kill would have been helpful. I'm starting to look towards Winter Dogs and where they can start to win it, especially now that Primal Fury gets taken away from them. My eyes immediately went over to this Pyromancer. Try and pick it up, see what you can do to maybe pull that in your favor. The downside was, again, they were getting aggressive over onto the right-hand side looking for a kill. And I think that neutral objective, especially if it goes the way of Tiburones, is just going to make things even more difficult for them. It's 5,000 gold, pushing 6,000, and they're just playing catch-up at this point. But I do like that. If you have a little bit of patience, you know that items eventually are going to be able to match up. I mean, look, you're not too terribly far behind, at least in terms of items. The biggest difference is down there for the carries. Wowie significantly behind where Rinjaru is in terms of build. Everybody else is mostly even, and so you can maybe gloss over that, start to look at the levels and say, okay, well, we're going to catch up. We already have a level 20 there for Spreen, so you're bound to hit it if you're BennyQ. You're going to play up to the match, and then you can start stepping up to the Tiburones in a much more equal fashion. The downside is, again, most of these equal fights that they've had have been so overwhelmingly in favor of the Tiburones that I think I need BennyQ to really pop off or Wowie to really pop off in one of these fights to convince me that they're going to be able to keep up the pace.
And Spreen has just kind of been silently farming here in the mid lane. He's level 20, has 4 full items online, working towards his final one here, and then we'll still need to upgrade that conduit gem, most likely to that. I already forgot the name of it there for a moment. We'll be going in towards the green gem immediately after. Gets a little bit of extra bonus and protections towards himself as he continues going through. But the fact that this Raijin has been essentially unanswered in every single one of these fights, and this is not looking good here for the Winter Dogs.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think is maybe weighing on them as of this point. They've got all the beads, 4 pairs of beads. The only person who doesn't have it is Heat, and guess who doesn't need it? Heat. And I think that in the ideal world, Gamma or Aquarius blinks in, gets a 4-man ult, everybody but Heed, burns all of their beads, and then the other one blinks in, gets them all up in their ult, and pulls them in. Either burns CC immune ults, Spreen has one, Cope has one, Rinjaru has one, or pulls them somewhere and to the middle of the fight, and then they are able to clean up and find a big win. The problem is most of these neutral objectives, Tower 1 in mid being another case of that, have just been going every single time in favor of the Tiburones. It's one of these like death by 1,000 cuts. They don't need the 9 kills they have, although 9 kills is definitely not hurting because they've got the Gold Fury, they got the Primal Fury, they got the Pyromancer. They're winning pretty much any neutral objective, any neutral area that they need to.
Speaking of 9, 90. That's the amount of damage that a single crit from Wowie did to Heat.
That's not a lot of damage.
At that little bit. Right at that tier 1 tower, Heat had kind of like looped around towards the back. Wowie spotted him and threw a basic and hit him for 90 damage on a crit. That Spectral Armor already paying dividends for him, has quite a bit of protections online. So right now, it's going to be tough for really both of these hunters to get some of that big damage through with their crits, as both solo laners have gone for the Spectral, so they're going to have some extra tankiness. Even with Aquarius going Mystical Mail, he's got some extra physical protection online. But Aquarius is right here at the front of everything, and he's getting collapsed on by the Tiburones, and it'll be all 5 members of Tiburones here to try and push the Winter Dogs back. And this is how they took both of the last objectives, is they just put one person at the front and said, you're not crossing this line.
Well, and the good news, again, they've got Cope available to them. They're not necessarily worried. Like, they have such good engage on Tiburones and good counter-engage on Tiburones. I do like the Pridwin's pickup for Aquarius and Gamma, though, because if anybody is going to need that extra shield on ult, it is those two. And I think being able to get engaged, get into this fight, is such a big promise for them. But again, you have to look down towards the relics. Not only is there a bracer available, so Sybil's going to be able to pump up the team, they've got all 4 beads ready for them whenever they need them.
Heat in a little bit of danger, but Cope going up into the sky. It's an ult from Gamma, but he's not going to pull anybody except for Sybil in, not using his own beats. Heat with the World Serpent looking for some damage. Gamma is the one caught out in the midst of it, gets hit. Heat comes out of the ultimate, still looking for damage. Gamma's caught in the middle of all of them, but can they get the last hit? He's juking as Betsy can, but Renjaru takes him down. Heat looking for Wow in the breath, will outlast the ages. That's 2 kills on the board for Tiburones, and now they can start setting their sights towards Fire Giant.
If I could give Player of the Game awards away, it has to go to Heat right now, right? I mean, not only 4-0 and 3 picking up a lot of the kills, but right there, Cope does, first off, a brilliant job. Gets to Wowie, zones Wowie out, makes Wowie feel very, very uncomfortable. But if it weren't for Heed, that kill gets turned around, you lose your jungler. Heed comes in, saves him, makes a big play for them there, makes a good disruptive ult, separates the team. The way that the Tiburones are tackling the Winter Dogs and just kind of pulling them apart, it just feels so good from their perspective. I mean, the way that they're winning this fight has been so clean. And I mean, you have to look at it. You still have both relics up. If you're Spreen, you still have your beads. If you're Sybil, you're not really feeling a lot of pressure for a lot of the backliners. Renjaru takes a little bit, but he's more than happy to do so. If you have to be the lightning rod for your team's success, sometimes it works out, especially when you have this big of a lead.
3 unanswered objectives for Tiburones. They were able to take, starting off the Primal Fury, then they were able to grab Pyromancer, and now a Fire Giant under their belts. 8,000 gold to their name, and well, with another Fury respawn here, Tiburones can grab another potentially unanswered objective. Even Benny's not willing to step that far forward on this Tiamat, so it will be a second objective on the board, or a 4th objective, a second Fury, I should say, probably here on the board for Tiburones as they grab that one, and now can start looking over towards some of these towers. Only Tier 2 towers left standing. That's 4,500 gold for the quick mat sitting there on the map available to them to continue really just exaggerating this gold lead that they've already started up.
Yeah, I think it's just a bigger problem. There's still 5 towers on the other side. Winter Dogs, like, if you're looking to close a 10k gold gap, 5 towers is not a bad way to do it. Like you said, 4,500 just in the Tier 2s, make that 5,500 if you get those Tier 1s. All of a sudden, that's half of what the Tiburones' lead is. You're able to at least chip away at that. Then there's a Pyromancer that's available for you. That can get you about another 1k. There's a lot of options for the Winter Dogs to still try and balance things out. But that doesn't balance out when you add in those Tier 2s you had just mentioned. If they knock down a lot of these towers, get that other gold into their own pockets, well, this gets to be like 1,500 gold or 15,000 gold in the lead, and then things start to get a little more awkward for them. Because, I mean, at that point, you're looking at should be Tier 3 items, upgraded starters, upgraded relics for almost everybody on the Tiburones.
There is. Blinking in the backline, finds 3 with the ult, but doesn't end up pulling anybody. Instead, Spreen will dive back away. Heat in the ultimate as well as Cope. Crashing down, looking for Gamma. Spreen finds Kirmi. Gamma goes in with the ultimate, but won't pull anybody back. Instead, it's Aquarius locked in the middle of 4 and taken down. Cope, baby, getting the credit for it, and all the while, Heat is still sitting at the front of all of it, fully healthy.
I mean, just fine, and they're separating them once again. Kirmi, Aquarius, they didn't have anything to do. There was nothing Aquarius was able to accomplish after going in there, and now the Tiburones can just start running it down.
Wowie and Benny both having to run back. Gamma just now getting back to the base. They'll get a chain against Cope, but Heat is here to make sure they don't go any further and make sure to save their Ratatosker through it. Mid-Phoenix falls down here at the 28-minute mark. The base has finally been broken open. There's still 2 more towers they should probably look towards taking before they go towards that Titan.
If they had been able to get 1 more kill, that's game right there. But knowing that there's 3, specifically knowing that there's a Tiamat and a Ram on the other side defending, yeah, you want to pump the brakes, slow down a little bit on the roll, and then go pick up what you can. Again, why, risk something so heavily? I mean, they could not only turn it around, balance the game out if you are able to get a big win there for the Winter Dogs and under your Titan. when you could just fall back and do what the Tiburones are doing, which is win harder. I mean, every single thing they have done so far has just put them more and more in the lead. The only thing they've really lost so far this game was that first Gold Fury, and hasn't done a whole ton for the Winter Dogs.
Can we talk about the kind of the unsung hero of this team with it, Sybil as well? 0-0 and 13, the perfect support slash line for him. Has it been a part of every single kill that's happened so far for Tiburones? I mean, coming in here, you highlighted earlier as a sub for the team, now probably permanent member of the team replacing Blugan. He's playing like he's been with this team the entire phase.
And you know what? I'm here for it. Like you said, having 100% kill participation, just in general, like period in a game, if you do that, that is solid. But being as a support, being able to make sure they all get gifted away, showcases that Sybil is in a very good spot. Again, I have to highlight the Bracer because I think the Bracer has been doing a lot for them in a lot of these small engagements where especially it's kind of predetermined where you're going to fight. You know what's going to be happening for your team. But also that Terra ult. I mean, you know, we used to joke about it, and it doesn't do it quite as much as it used to, but still press 4 and win a team fight half the time. It used to be so solid that it was guaranteed for you. Here, it's still a very similar spot. Sybil has been so active, so controlling in a lot of these fights that I think if you look towards any of these engagements, especially if like you see Spreen popping off or Njara popping off or when Heat has been picking up these kills, I can guarantee Sybil has had a pretty heavy hand in it.
Those are back in some of the darker days. It's fine when you got like Soul Reaver with your Terra, and you kind of built like more half and half as your damage. Now that was obviously more when she was kind of a solo laner as her metaphor, but man, it used to be you just blink in the back line, hit 4, and then just literally any dot spread mage, especially something like a Raijin, you just killed their team in an instant for it. Maybe not to the same degree as it does now, or maybe better than it does now, but still a very impactful ultimate. Fire Giant started up by Tiburones. The wall not going to hit Aquarius. Him and Gamma both trying to walk away. The two frontliners don't want to get caught out here by Tiburones. They'll pull off the Sharks and push them back.
And this is an awkward spot to be in. I mean, like, you have to figure out how you want to get aggressive. Aquarius has ult, has blink, same thing. Ult and blink available for Gamma as well as an Ankh. And I think that might make the big play for them, but they have to get in there. They have to get something with it.
Sybil will dash in towards Aquarius, gets caught on his second dash through. The chains are good from Gamma to hold him in place. Ultimate from Aquarius, only going to throw Sybil back, and Cope landing in from the sky. Gamma not going to be able to get that ultimate off. He gets taken down beforehand, but Sybil finally falls down. Kirmi getting the credit, and BennyQ taking down Rinjari, but it's Kirmi in danger. Cope dashing in, finds one. In through the World Serpent goes Heat, but who is this target going to be? Maybe just go for an escape option. He lands once on a BennyQ, and maybe looking for an escape for the third one. Back over towards the safety with Cope Baby looking at Aquarius, but both are so low.
Oh, they've got the damage from Spreen here, but I don't know if this is going to be good enough. Wowie's going to be able to rotate in. Same thing for BennyQ.
BennyQ gets one, and Spreen may be falling immediately after the Aegis wears out, and BennyQ picks up 2, and Wowie with another one. That's a deicide for the Winter Dogs.
I mean, that is such a good fight from the Winter Dogs, but they do still have to be careful. Look at these minions. Not enough to be able to find the Titan kill just yet, but it showcases where their priorities are, and it goes back to what I had said, now this feels like 10, 15 minutes ago at this point, which is, after a certain point, and Mifflin had made this point in a lot of those EU games as well, your gold lead is nice. You've got 11,000 up if you Tiburones. But they have mostly 6 items. The only person, again, kind of lacking in it is going to be Wowie, still trying to finish off that last one. And at the end of the day, who cares if you're going to end up decided and they're going to be able to get a Fire Giant for it? Yeah, this is going to make up just enough of that slack that they're going to be able to close what the gold gap really feels like. And it might as well be even despite a hefty lead for the Tiburones. The biggest thing they have going for them is the map control, and that is with that exposed Phoenix weakened in the mid lane, as well as 2 Phoenixes on the side that are open versus 4 towers still standing on the other side. Makes things a little better and a little more favorable for the Tiburones. But I think it goes to showcase that the Winter Dogs, if they can allocate their resources properly, have no issues winning a fight.
And with that fight victory, they're able to get their first objective, the Enhanced Fire Giant. Talk about a first objective of the game to get for yourself. And then an Oni Fury to boot with it. Going to give them a little bit of extra minion lane push. So the Winter Dogs take that objective down. And we'll now look towards going back to the base and spend up some of that gold that is now starting to slowly dwindle as far as that lead goes. Now only about 7,700 gold in favor of Tiburones, but as we start hitting 6th slot on just about every single member of the game here, that gold doesn't matter as much anymore. It looks like it's really only Gamma who hasn't hit that 6th item just yet, looking to build into that cloak for a for a final slot.
You can see Spectral Armors now on 3 members of the Winter Dogs to help deal with Rinjaru, who did pick up that Wind Demon. It's the Deathbringer instead for Wowie, which balances out. Wowie also only has the 3 stacks now on that Rage, but he is looking to get aggressive.
Benny Q has to leap away. Heat goes up in the World Serpent. They are looking to hunt down this mid laner, and they will do so. Cope Baby gets the credit for the kill, but Gamma finds Rinjaru and even looking for Spreed as well. Spreed so low into the tower, but it's a double kill for Gamma and the Tier 1 tower. 2-for-1 trade. And are they going? Are they going for a base race? Okay, no, everybody from the Tiburones are going back now.
I mean, yeah, you have to, right? There's no way. Look, you've got Cope. Cope can do decent damage. They've got a Rom with a Fire Giant buff. I don't want to mess with that. No. He is going to take down a Phoenix and kill a Titan before you can do anything on the other side. So I like the fact that they back. It will keep that Titan from falling here from the Tiburones. But this is a good spot. Yes, grand scheme, sucks Benny Q died. Best case scenario, Benny Q is the lightning rod. Everyone had to commit it so heavily to killing the Tiamat that Wowie just got to roll through. Still has both his relics and his ult, or not his ult, but is going to be able to keep the buff and continue pushing down this lane. I mean, it is the best case scenario for how many towers they had left.
Well, Cope is going to try and keep some of these minions out and start taking away some of those Oni minions that have pushed through the mid lane. He'll be successful in doing so, but they've already lost their Tier 2 tower on right and the Phoenix. Mid lane Tier 2 and Phoenix gone. And now this left side Tier 2, which is standing with...
So
I can only imagine that's probably less than 10 health that tower is sitting on at this point. That'll be an easy walk in. Even Aquarius could just walk up and tap that tower if he so chooses for it, and could even go for the Phoenix immediately after. They still have a little over a minute left on this enhanced Fire Giant. Instead, it's Gamma looking for Rinjaru. No beads available, so it'll just be the ultimate out of the Hunter.
I like it. Well played so far. Gamma a little caught out, but that is ultimately main goal. Look, beads are down for Rinjaru. Now the ult is down, and that's going to be Heat getting in.
Kirmi in danger. Heat able to get one Spreen, taking him out, but it's a trade out. Kirmi finds Rinjaru. Now Gamma and Wowie are both in danger. Heat crashing in with Cope Baby. They're able to take down one to make it a 2-for-2 as Benny picks up Sybil. Spreen in the back line being dealt with by Aquarius, but Benny Q is looking at Heat, and there is nowhere for this Serpent to go. Heat will fall down. Benny Q with the double.
What a good body block from Aquarius, just making sure to keep him locked up. They do lose Wowie, though. A lot of their significant pushing power has disappeared. Benny Q doesn't have his ult, or I'm sorry, doesn't have the Fire Giant. Gamma and Aquarius do. That's good sustain, but look, even enhanced Fire Giant for them isn't necessarily helping a
maybe that's just kind of a testament to both of them here, as they both recognize that, hey, I'm the sponge this time, or hey, I'm the sponge this time. So they make sure to separate their lightning rod status and keep each other away as far away as possible from him. You saw Benny all the way towards the right side of that fight in the jungle, up near the back camps in the green buff. Wowie was all the way back towards near the purple buff there. So as long as they're able to keep themselves separated in those fights, well, you got to pick one, and when they try and divide and conquer this team, it shows that the Winter Dogs are able to fight back in that more divided state.
This gold lead at one point was like 12,000, approaching 13, 14, 15K. Now it's about 2. And Tiburones like still have a lead. They still got a 5-kill lead as well. This Fire Giant might be the most important fight of the game, just because whoever gets it will end up winning on the back of it, or at least should, assuming they're able to pick up a couple of kills in the process. And it's kind of surprising, although maybe not so much when you realize that they're down 3 Phoenixes, that nobody from the Tiburones is even showing up.
No, not a single soul from Tiburones are going to even try and step foot towards this Fire Giant. Winter Dogs will pick that up. The mid lane Phoenix is about to respawn, but with all 5 members in Enhanced Fire Giant, as quickly as it does respawn, it will shortly fall down immediately afterwards. But Winter Dogs with that EFG, they'll start grouping up towards this mid lane and look to take that objective right back down. They've got a Fire Wave pushing in on every single side of the map, and they've got Tiamat minions pushing on the right side to make sure they can take that Phoenix down whenever it respawns as well.
Yeah, this is going to be a very awkward defense for them. I like the group up, though. Tiburones have a really good squad for engaging in a group like this, so I think it's going to be great that everything can coalesce around a single Phoenix. And right now, it's defend, divide, and conquer if you can. Right side is either going to go down. Nobody's looking over there. They're just looking for the defense. It's lose one or lose both.
Q can throw some damage at the Phoenix. Hear Me has to leap away, but Gamma finds two with the chains, going up in the ultimate, looking to pull anybody back, but he's not going to grab anyone. Instead, it's Heat going in aggressive with the world, surfing towards both the carries. Gamma already falls down. Renjuru strikes first blood of the fight, but Q is looking for one. They find Hear Me taking down Renjuru. Aquarius now looking at the backliners, and it's Wowie left alone as Q falls down. Cope Baby getting the credit for that one. Sybil dashes through, and it's a successful Phoenix defense by the Tiburones.
And they're going to be able to hold on, but Wowie's still alive, and Wowie should be able to lifesteal just enough in the jungle, as it seems. They'll be able to stay alive, maybe not comfortable, but alive. Ultimately, you can see him backing off to try and get that power. They did manage to maintain that right Phoenix staying down and the left Phoenix, but better for the Tiburones is that they make sure the mid Phoenix respawns as of right now. So it's a little bit less pressure that's going to be applied to them from the base. They're going to have to reapply that to the left-hand side in a couple of minutes when that comes back up. And they don't necessarily have a lot of room to explore outside of their own base. But they're going to be able to push the waves back, pick up the buffs that were left for them by the Winter Dogs. As they wait for Gamma and Q to come back. Losing that Fire Giant on Benny and Gamma isn't the end of the world either, because now Aquarius still has it. Good, you've got it on a tank. He's going to be able to get aggressive. Kirmi still has it, but the most important, Wowie still has it. If I'm looking to kill off a Phoenix left, mid, wherever, and potentially go for a Titan, that's all I needed on.
Still a little over a minute and a half left on this Fire Giant power play, but not too much up for them to take. They could try again for the mid lane Phoenix if they want to. They could try and take down that left side Phoenix, but with all the fighting that happened in mid, they were able to strip away the right side Phoenix. The minions were able to push that one down, so they don't lose out on everything and necessarily for that fight. They just have the two Phoenixes now that they have to knock back down one more time. Winter Dogs starting to group up towards this left-hand side. I don't know if you spot it there, but Q had an elixir of power that he bought after that death, so that little Tiamat going to be hitting just that much harder as we're already approaching 41 minutes in this left side group up.
And this is, I mean, this is crucial, right? If you get another defense like that in your Tiburones, you get to turn this game around. But if this Phoenix falls, then your base is just wide open.
Aquarius goes in the back, finds two with the ultimate. It's Renjuru in danger. Kirmi looking for the kill, but not going to be successful in staying alive. Kirmi takes down Renjuru, and Cope Baby dives off the tree. Not going to find anything. Sybil stunned out, but left side Phoenix is already down, and with one member away, the carry from Tiburones, they're going to have to put up one heck of a defense to try and keep the Winter Dogs back.
You're in dire straits right now. Hey, that mid-Phoenix you worked so hard to defend last time, yeah, by the way, it's gone again. One more time. 3 Phoenixes down. They've got fire minions on right that are pouring in.
Cope Baby down to half. Spreen and Sybil inching back towards the throne room to defend this Titan, but Aquarius will dive in the back line with it. Kirmi cooks one away. Titan already down to half health, and there's not enough damage on this defense for Tiburones. Winter Dogs able to crawl back from the depths and secure game number 1.
I mean, 25 to 30 minutes of that game was the Tiburones controlling it. I mean, and not by any small margin. They are winning that game through and through. The Winter Dogs had nothing they could do about it until one EFG fight. All of a sudden, they're able to pick it up. They wait for their power curve, really. This team comp was just so heavily stacked late game that eventually it was going to catch up. It finally does. I mean, what a wonderfully way to play it through as well, because they're able to pick up a lot of those kills. Wowie has some moments. Q gets their moments. And admittedly, it takes them a little bit longer than I think they'd like. Another, 10 minutes for them to finally burn it down. But they took control of the game away from the Tiburones, and they just pushed it.
It's been a rough one here for the Winter Dogs for the first half of the game, but the second half comes up in their favor. We're going to take it to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get started up for game number 2. Welcome back to the NASCC. Game number 1 goes the way of the Winter Dogs after a grueling, near 45-minute game that we had here. And that's just game number 1 of this best-of-3 set. The Winter Dogs looking to hold on to their top spot here with this victory in their first matchup. I'm joined here by Gormize as we get ready and get set to go into game number 2.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what the Winter Dogs are able to do. A lot of game 1 was Tiburones winning. They lose one fight, and then all of a sudden it's, oh no, wait, losing. I mean, in that fight, they lose the Fire Giant. They lose their Phoenixes afterward. A lot of pressure, because they had 4 towers up. They were the ones that had exposed to Phoenix and weakened it. It really did feel like it took, 30 minutes before a real turnaround happened for the Winter Dogs. And a lot of, I want to say, coming from BinnyQ having a really good performance, Wowie in some of these moments having a really good performance, both of them being able to pick up a lot of really key kills for their team, and specifically watching the frontliners, because up to this point, Gamma and Aquarius hadn't really been able to do anything in these fights. It finally felt like around that Fire Giant, and from that point forward, they really knew what they were trying to hit home, and they had their strategy for the fight set up.
And it's one thing to note that at that 31-minute mark, they were 13,000 gold down. Here, just not even barely 5 minutes later, they're 2,500 gold down. That's the difference that this one singular enhanced Fire Giant made for this team. It was able to get a nice turnaround. We saw good defense from Tiburones at that mid lane Phoenix. They were able to push them back, stay successful, hold on to that Phoenix, and even though it had respawned, had been weakened, they maintained for a little bit, but the Winter Dogs, they just come right back and decide to take left side, then drop the mid lane Phoenix forward, and, well, now winning game number 1 here, looking across it. 0-2 and 21, though. I still have to shout out Sybil here, because I think that still was 100% kill participation for the support. So even in losing, Sybil able to still maintain that 100% mark.
Yeah, and played very well for someone who, again, was coming in for this game. I think is the first time that we've seen them with this team in the SCC. And so a really good performance from them, despite the fact that it ended up being a loss. I think that that one's more attributed to team play towards the end as opposed to anything else. Everything that they did, quite literally for 31 minutes, was pretty much on point, to the point where it was starting to feel like, man, how do you say that Tiburones are winning in any, like, a 40th different way at this point? Because they had been doing it for so much, but all it takes is one slip up sometimes, especially against a team like Winter Dogs.
I mean, it looked just like the EU games that we saw earlier, where it was well, maybe a little bit more exaggerated this time around with 13,000 gold in their favor, but teams earlier were 5,000 gold up, and one fight at, 26 to 31 minutes? That seems to be our mark right now. If we make it to that stage and somebody's drastically far behind, maybe we see a turnaround for it there for these two teams. But Winter Dogs with the big one up on there. Do you think maybe as we go into picks and bans here, Gore, that we maybe see any kind of adjustment here from Tiburones?
Man, it's a little interesting because their picks and bans for game 1 weren't bad. I mean, like, most of them transitioned really well into the late game. Ultimately, I think maybe they had some issues with the Ares that probably helped slow them down, but the Yorm felt like such a good pick into what Winter Dogs had picked up, and they had such a wide margin of success. I think that one comes down to that fight. Like, I think the way that they executed it just didn't fall into order for what they needed it to be. I think Winter Dogs outplayed them, which is to be expected when you're playing up against the #1 seed. They're not going to give you a 10th option, I guess, at that point to be able to end them, and they're going to have to start fighting back. I think for a lot of this, maybe some of the pivots might be that Tiamat, the Rom, but they didn't even cause troubles for him until 32 minutes into the game.
And at that stage, when you were, 13,000 gold up, you're thinking you're in the ball's in your court. You're winning this one. No problem. Just easy breezy, coast right through. That wasn't the situation for them. As the first picks come through, here's the first bans, I should say. Pop in, it's Odin, Terra, and Osiris. A little bit of swap there, throwing the Terra in that mix for the Winter Dogs bans. And on the other side of it, it's still going to be Hell, RTO, and Umojis. So same bans all the way across the board, except the Terra, now the new one kind of thrown in here for Winter Dogs, where it was Serket last time, right?
And I actually like this because, hey, look at it. Like, they could lock in Serket. I don't care how well that Serket's played. It's not going to be as good as that Terra was. I think that Terra caused a lot of trouble for them in the duo lane, and then continued throughout the entirety of that game. Even towards the very end, that one good defense around mid we saw, I can attribute more or less to that Terra. So I think controlling that and trying to isolate a little bit of what got them ahead will help the Winter Dogs out.
You know, one thing I didn't look at in that last game was what skin the Raijin was using. Because if it wasn't the monkey skin, that's probably the reason why it lost, because that's the only skin, right? By the way, we'll clarify out here. We were talking in the green room when Mifflin and Dave were talking about, can you look up? You confirm with me you can't like look up skin. No, okay, so
we don't track that.
So Gore can't track skins used in the game. So don't bombard him with your questions on that. Save him a little bit of sanity.
I'll just ignore him. I'll tell you. I'll tell you right now. I'll either reply, hey, I can't do that, or I won't say anything.
You're telling me you're just gonna ignore my request, not even say no. You're just gonna say nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's how it is. So if you throw any
I've been doing really good. I have not spent a lot of time on Twitter in the last like week and a half. I don't know why I haven't, but for some reason, I think. Well, it's like. Just like when this was the case last year, like when I was working from home as well, where it's just like, I just don't idly play on my phone as much. When I'm here, sometimes, like you just sit around and you'll be like, man, I'm, like picks and bans are going, check Twitter or something. But like, so if I miss something, oops.
Well, as far as oopses go, the Sturket and Cerberus were both able to make it for the Winter Dogs lineup. So Aquarius getting his solo laner back, Raijin, Khepri, and Artemis on the other side of the board for Tiburones. But getting Tiamat Cerberus again for the Winter Dogs seems a little bit criminal.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good feeling when you've got, like, I would argue that the Cerberus took a little while to get on. Like, same to the Tiamat, but both of them very successful from what we've seen, so I expect to see a lot out of them. I will say, though, Artemis, Raijin, Khepri, like, that's such a good top 3 from the Tiburones. Khepri alone has been someone that has been on my mind. I mean, we saw him a lot during the playoffs where he's a first pick in some of those sets because he just does so much. He's got good setup. He's got protections that he can give to your team. He is really good at forcing you into what feels like a 5v6 no matter what, because someone's going to get brought back to life.
And the Cope special comes out with a Thanatos 10th pick. The Rat Tosser wasn't working as well for him in the late game. It's a little hard to kill some of those tankier targets. Well, now you don't need to fully kill those tanky targets. Just get them a little bit lower, closer to that 30% or so health, and now you're able to dunk right in with a nice ultimate to make sure to get that execute. But a Danzaburo switch up here. We saw 2 Hunter bans with the Rom and the Heimdall, so the switch up to Danzaburo, a little curious here for the Winter Dogs.
Yeah, it's not one that we get to see as often anymore. I mean, PandaCat was like the only one who was playing him in the SPL. A couple of other Hunters have picked him up every now and then, but nobody was like hardcore locking him in the same way. And for the most part, it's just he falls into this weird area where it's like, hey, his matchup isn't going to be bad. It's not going to be great. He's just going to play. And like, depending on how you interact with your rocket, how you use it and utilize it in a fight, that's where the big difference can be made.
Well, let's jump on into game number 2 and see if Tiburones can secure their win this time and maybe not throw it away at 31 minutes for themselves, or can the Winter Dogs make this a nice 2-0 and hold themselves at that nice first seed spot. As always, we've got Doug standing by on our camera to make sure to bring us all the action for it. And looking across through, we do see a Bumba's Dagger picked up here by Kirmi as opposed to the Mannequin Scepter that we've been seeing more and more often from some of the other junglers.
And honestly, I think it's just the way Kirmi is going to be playing, and I think it kind of showcases maybe where the Sturket is going to be, but also the late game potential. We've been talking a lot about that, and I'm interested to see where like Bumba's Hammer was like the biggest thing. How many months ago was that at this point? I mean, it feels like a little while ago, but still something that Kirmi's going to be able to potentially rotate into. I also am excited because Kirmi, like Gilgamesh, as good of a god as Gilgamesh can be, did take a little while before it started really playing setup. Kirmi on Sturket has that setup available almost instantly. Well, maybe we'll give it like level 2, level 3, once you decide to either A, pick up your taunt, maybe it's level 4, or level 5 when you get your ult. Either way, that's way sooner than what we got to see out of that, specifically the Gilgamesh. There's also a better chance for them. Cope was able to escape a first blood last game that could have been pivotal for the Winter Dogs and potentially changing the way that entire game goes. It's not going to be as easy to do on a Thanatos.
No, especially when there's a last breath poison. So even if you could get up into the sky here, previously it was in the Cosmos, this time with the hovering death. So yeah, you can get out of into the sky and avoid some of that damage that's down below you. But if that last breath poison's ticking away, there is no safety for you up there. Instead, the Thanatos came through. I saw the Nike and immediately I was like, all right, cool, jungle lock-in, no big deal. Completely just going past the fact that Cope maybe locked in a Thanatos, and so we're seeing Nike solo this time around.
Yeah, weird to see her in solo. I can't remember the last time. I mean, again, I have to throw it like to the Dragons. Like Finoke maybe has played her sometime solo this year, but even then, I can't remember the game. I'm just kind of basing it on a hunch because Finoke likes to do that kind of thing every now and then. I think she's still going to be really good though, because if you look at the way a lot of these Nike plays end up going, especially late game, You can go for a damage dive bomb. I'm going to jump into the middle and just blow everybody up and see what happens. Die for it, but really set up my team. Or you can go what we've seen a little more often, which has been this kind of bruiser-esque tanky build where you're going to jump in. Your goal is to get a massive slow, spread it to everybody that you can, and really just try to find the setup for your team. I think this is going to be a good rotation for them. And honestly, if Heat can have half the performance that they just had on the Jormungandr on this Nike, then this is going to be a very good game for the Tiburones.
And even with all the CC immunity in the world, everybody on Tiburones is going to pick up a set of purification beads because they're going up against, well, Aquarius, big AoE CC ultimate, Gamma, big AoE CC ultimate, and then Kirmi, nice single target ultimate that you can throw. And if you don't have your beads available for that one, you get thrown into, what, a Danzaburo and a Tiamat. Yeah, no, give me the beads. I'm getting out of there.
Absolutely, right? I don't want to be a part of any of it. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, like, Tiamat as well, like, maybe not the ultimates, but, like, there's a lot of other CC elsewhere in the kits for Winter Dogs, and that makes things even more troublesome, right? Small taunts from Danzaburo. At the end of the day, are you, ideally going into a fight thinking, I'm going to hit this taunt? No, but if it hits, do you win that fight? Yeah, so, like, all these little things that can really make it a big favorable fight for the Winter Dogs. Beads, not only necessary. I'm starting to look at these CC immune ults like Cope, Spreen, Rinjaru. Gonna need those to make sure that they can feel as safe as possible.
An easy blue buff invade here for Tiburones, taking that one away from Aquarius, who's just going to get bullied out by Heat here for a little bit. It'll kind of be battle for battle amongst these solo laners. This time not seeing the Guardian versus Guardian matchup. It'll be the more traditional, at least, Warrior versus Guardian matchup. And Rinjaru falling low, a pull by Sybil. Going to try to interrupt the flames for it. I like the idea by it, but was a little bit awkward on the timing for it. Gamma's still able to get a nice bit of damage, but at the end of the day, Rinjaru still holds on to beads and holds on to his life.
And that's just, I mean, first off, good for them, right? Last time we saw Rinjaru ending up getting that first blood, but this is much more difficult lane. I think Khepri, as good as the pressure can come from a Khepri, it's not enough in my mind to keep up with where Wowie and Gamma are, especially since they've already been able to invade a purple buff. They're already stripping a little bit of experience. You're not too far behind, but you're feeling it is the best way to describe it if you're Rinjaru. And I think that that's going to be the case over here. And more so that Kirmi now being on a much more proactive junglers and a setup to potentially get aggressive. Someone like Artemis is not too keen about dealing with Serket. Serket's got lots of mobility. Artemis has none. She doesn't have anything to get away. I mean, she's got her CC, she's got some safety, but ultimately if Kirmi can get in there, Kirmi is going to have just fine of a time. And I think it makes things a little more interesting, especially because this is the matchup I'm keeping my eye on, the junglers.
Cope, baby, but no ultimate available for Kirmi. Aquarius a little bit late on his, and Cope able to get to the sky. That little blue buff invade earlier, those small back harpies may have been enough to seal the deal. Spreen has to use his ultimate to get away from the no escape as his beads were already down, so no blood spilled, but a lot used.
What a good burn, but now Kirmi's maybe the one who's going a little too deep. Is still getting aggressive onto Cope.
Still going through, used the ambush to get himself out of there, trying to go for a counter invade on the tail end of the fight, but with no ultimate available to Kirmi, there's no chance of him getting that kill, especially with two players of Tiburones staring him down.
A very interesting, like, heavy commit for no kills to happen there. I'm actually really excited to see the way those teams handle it. Most importantly are going to probably be the beads that are down and the ult that is down from Spreen. A lot of time where there's no CC immunity over there. Good for Gamma to capitalize on. Even Kirmi now with that ultimate wasn't available when they were trying to lock down Cope. But, well, maybe you don't need to lock down Cope. Maybe you can lock down instead someone like Spreen in the mid lane and make things a little bit easier for you. Will need to try and bait out something like the Thunder Crash early on, or just have Ares ready behind you to make sure that it doesn't end up causing him to disengage before you would like. But ultimately, it gives you a good target for first blood.
I just like to call that a classic case of the Cope baby, where I'm level 5, I'm on a god with a semi-global get-out-of-jail-free card style ultimate. Let's just go invade back harpies just because we can. You don't see him on the map? Might as well just go for it. You got nothing to lose. Except, well, maybe your life. But look, Kirmi wasn't level 5. That was the perfect opportunity for him.
Well, and that's the second game in a row now that Cope has been that aggressive, but because of his ult has been able to escape from getting first blooded. And admittedly, if it works out for you, it works out well. It was also showcasing, and what I really like out of this is, like, Thanatos, his early game is nuts. His early game is so helpful. And if you're not able to find kills, whatever. If you're finding invades and stripping away at least some experience from the opposing jungler, you're getting something done, because late game, you still have your execute, and I think that's going to be such a big deal here. Having an execute against 2 Guardians, plus who is relatively tanky, and Tiamat, as well as Kirmi, who's probably going to build a little hybrid, it's going to be very helpful for them late game. Plus, I mean, nobody was going to take it from him, but it's one of the best ways to deal with something like a hi-rez, and knowing that you have it on your side just enhances your team fight, I think, even more so.
I swear Benny is just spinning a wheel as far as this Lost Artifact tree goes, and just whatever the wheel lands on is the one that he picks up. This time around, it's a Charon's Coin, where game number 1 it was a Rod of Tahuti. On the other end, Spreen has the Chronos Pendant, uses that CC extra for himself, gets CC immunity, get away from the no escape, and now he's in danger, and in the sky is Cope Baby looking for a target, jumps towards Kirmi, but Kirmi able to leap away and get out of danger. Benny Q, he'll use the ultimate to spin and get a little bit of safety, but eats a nice little Death Scythe.
All they needed was for Spreen to take about 3 or 4 steps forward, and Kirmi was going to jump in ready for a fight, much like this.
Going in, finds Cope with the last breath, and Sybil is the one caught in the middle, uses his Scarab's Blessing to get himself out, and the Don's rocket from downtown.
Wow,
okay. Finds Rencharu and is standing in the middle, face tanking against 4 players, but he uses that leaf to get himself out of there, just kind of out of nowhere from that rocket. Didn't think he was going to commit to that.
You know what? I will agree with that. I didn't expect them to be going in at all, and I think Winter Dogs didn't necessarily want to. You can see from the fight the hesitation afterward. Weren't really looking for a fight. Weren't really looking to be passive either. Just trying to figure out what they could do with no mana, no ult, no health right here. Kirmi, yeah, has to be careful, ultimately. Still alive, still fine. And with no first blood, this is where things get a little more interesting to me, J-Mac, because you have to start looking and starting to levy, like, okay, well, how do these teams look mid-game? How do they look late game? And I like Tiburones late game, but I love Winter Dogs late game, so it's a very, very close call. And honestly, a lot of it comes down to Sybil. Sybil had a wonderful performance last game. But Khepri, good ults win the game for you. Non-plus ults and bad ults mean nothing, and then all of a sudden your team falls apart.
Especially if you're forced to use them on yourself more often than not. That's always the worst feeling in the world as a Khepri is, I want to save this to save one of my teammates, but sometimes you got to be able to save yourself in the process of it.
Can't use your ult if you're dead.
That's, you know, that's fair. But then if you use your ult and you die, well, now you're on the losing side of both coins. And may just be the case here. Sybil taunted back in, and no ultimate available to him will mean first blood going the way of Winter Dogs.
Look, I'm going to throw them out. After all of the cool fights they've had so far,
That's
what a lackluster first blood for them to pick up. Just, hey, yeah, what were you doing? Oh, yeah, we caught the support out in the jungle. No big deal.
He didn't have beats. He didn't have ult. We just got him. That's all we did. We walked forward, and he was there, so we killed him.
Sometimes that's all you got to do. And it puts them, again, look at this pressure that they're able to get just off of one kill. This is when the issue, and I think it was kind of the problem for a lot of these teams when you look at it. Tiburones had a very hefty lead for a long duration of last game. And still, it didn't really manifest itself to be this magnificently large, like, massive gold lead until 20 minutes in. I mean, they were mostly hovering maybe 2 to 3K ahead for the most part. I think there was an objective slightly before 20 minutes that got them to, like, the 5K mark and really started to feel like something. But Winter Dogs is one of those teams, and I think that this is going to be the case when we watch it here, that they're not going to give you a lot of wiggle room. If you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. And I think that's going to be a little bit of the threat Tiburones are going to have to take care of.
With their first kill on the board here, sitting 10 minutes in, the gold is pretty much dead. Even the experience, mostly even, aside from the fact that Kirmi is about a level and a half down compared to Cope Baby, who was able to get some nice back harpy invades earlier on, has just been mostly keeping up on his farm game, trying to make sure that he can stay ahead of Kirmi, make sure to keep this Thanatos relevant. And as far as relevancy goes, as long as you have an ultimate, I would say, as a Thanatos, you're pretty relevant.
Yeah, execute exists, therefore you're helpful, no matter what. And it's one of those things, when you say it like that, or when I say it like that, it sounds like, oh, you have to get an execute. Late game, half the time, you don't even look for the execute. You've got a great stun, and it's a nice, maybe not huge AoE, but it is still an AoE stun. If they're two clustered together, you can usually hit 2 people with that, and that is such a good setup for your team. Maybe not the best case scenario if you're the one having to go in, but if, you know, someone like Sybil's able to get a pluck, or Heed goes in and gets a massive slow, all of a sudden you've got great follow-up, and your damage is still nothing to be scoffed at late game. So I think that there's a good opportunity for Cope to play through this game and look really good. But it is, you know, adjusting to it. If you hadn't mentioned the fact that Cope is notorious for Thanatos, I think it would be a much more difficult conversation, but you just transition late game.
Well, Gamma gets one set of beads and one ultimate, and that'll be a retreat from Cope with nowhere to go for that ultimate. He decides just to use it as an escape option only. Sybil now down his beads, will only have ultimate to provide any form of cleanse or revive available. Kirmi goes in for the taunt, only hits Sybil with it. Cope eats a nice chunk of damage, but gets it all back with the help of Death Scythe. The ultimate from Renjaru will catch Kirmi, gets plucked back in. The trap is holding him in place, but Kirmi able to leap away. Cope trying to close the gap to take down Benny Q, needs that Death Scythe available, gets it, and the final basic after will take him down. Cope baby on the board for Tiburones, and maybe going to be able to get a second one here as Gamma pulled back in. The Raiju slows him down, but Wowie able to take down one on the other side, and Heed maybe looking to return the favor as Renjaru picks up Gamma. Heed grabs Wowie, and Aquarius has nowhere to go as he's pulled back and has to use the beads.
A nice 3-for-1 engagement. Tiburones picking up a lot of good kills. Benny starts that off with what I was going to call great peel for his team. Unfortunately, it just kind of turned everyone's attention over to him. Kirmi maybe trying to contest this Gold Fury as of right now.
Looking for it, goes in for the blink in the back line, but his kiss is down, so he doesn't have that CC. He'll be able to dash away, but not dash far away, as Renjaru cleans him up with the help of his mid laner, and a leap in from Heed will make sure they can secure Gold Fury. Tiburones finally on the board with their first objective.
Almost able to get a kill there as well. Almost kills off Sybil. But you get 4 kills, you drop 1, and you get a Gold Fury. Tiburones are more than happy with that engagement. Maybe not as massive a lead afterward as you would really want, just barely under that 2,000 gold mark, but even still, you are able to showcase a lot of little moments in a team fight that is going to make a big difference for you. I think Benny Q had really good peel in the way that the Winter Dogs were originally disengaging from the Tiburones was great, but then they just got caught out. Once Benny Q was caught up, it felt like everybody kind of went in haphazardly. Kirmi was still being chased, tried to re-engage to help save mid. Wowie, I didn't catch the beginning, the initial portion of that fight, was able to pick up a kill. I think actually had a really good performance, but it didn't stand out the way they needed it to.
Gamma's going to pull Sybil back, hits one chain, but missed the second on Spreen. Cope is in the sky looking for a target. He'll dunk onto Benny and deal about 3/4 of his health bar with that Death Scythe combo afterwards. But both Benny and Kirmi are low. They're going to have to retreat as Tiburones push them back.
Good news is that Cope can't do that again for a little bit. That's
a little bit.
The only, like, as long as that ult is down, you're not going to get stunned Death Scythe for a little bit. But ultimately, that Death Scythe, well, it's a threat.
It's
just, I mean, and it's such a good comp to be playing it into as well. Like Aquarius, Gamma, Benny Q are going to feel a lot of that damage. Kirmi as well, Wowie as well. Like everybody is going to be hurting from it. Gamma and Aquarius may be the ones that might be the happiest to try and take it, but even still aren't going to be too happy about that. Plus a nice big AoE silence along with an AoE slow. Heat had a really good knock-up as well with his leap. I mean, there's just so much CC that the Tiburones have that can really, really assist them in the middle of these fights, and we got to see it in tight jungle corridors. It just looks great.
Aquarius and Heed will slap box here in the solo lane for a little while. Heed still out on top as far as health goes, until a little bit of damage from the gassy breath. Kind of shows that Aquarius has the better end of that trade between them. But towards the red buff, Kirmi, Benny, and Gamma will group up to make sure to secure that one. You see about a 3-level disparity between the junglers. Cope Baby sitting level 14 now, just procced into that, and the level 11 for Kirmi as he takes that red. So that is a true 3. This not the 2.5, maybe closer to 2, but still in the 3. This is a direct 3-level difference between these junglers right now.
And that's a big deal. This early on, like Serket, look, Serket can fall behind. Serket wants to play tanky. You still need to be part of the game. Cope right now is going to be dictating a lot of this, has been stripping away a lot of experience as well. I like the way they've been playing this, but again, that was similar to the Ratatoskr, and honestly, this lead isn't as big as what they had this time last game. And so I'm looking at Tiburones, and I like what they're doing, but I need to see them have a much more convincing end game for me to start to buy over to their end. And I think that a lot of it is going to be based around, as of right now, what Cope's able to accomplish versus what Kirmi's able to accomplish. But soon, Spreen and Renjaru are going to have the spotlight on them.
Well, the good news for Kirmi is he's finally level 12. So now he can pick up purification beads, which he so desperately needs.
That's going to save a lot of time in life.
That was the big factor between. It was 14 versus 11, and that's really dangerous for Kirmi because he only had Blink available. Now he's got beads, maybe a little bit safer for this jungler, and maybe we see a little bit more proactive play out of him now that he knows he has that secondary form of safety via those beads, so maybe he can make some aggressive jumps in. He's got a full 40% CDR online thanks to the Pridwin and the Jotun's Wrath combo. Now is the time, however, where Tiburones are holding their lead at about 3,000, 3,500 in their name so far, and while it wasn't as huge as last time, they're still playing it to that same degree that they were in Game 1.
Yeah, it's just what kind of pressure you can get. First off, that fight around the Fury makes things overwhelmingly in favor of the Tiburones for right now, because that was such a clean fight for them. But it was also what felt like sloppy engage / sloppy disengage from the Winter Dogs. And so I don't know that you're going to be able to get another 4-for-1 trade. Well, at least not easily, not anywhere as easily as they did it last time. And with another Fury spawning up pretty soon, especially an Oni Fury at that, a lot of pressure that can be gained from this. I expect to see Winter Dogs have a presence over here on this side of the map and try to figure out what they're going to be able to do with it.
I like what Cope did there. He positioned himself back behind the Harpies to make sure that if Gamma throws a chain, it's going to hit him instead of the Harpies, so they can secure the oracles for themselves and make sure that they have the vision for when this Oni Fury does spawn and when they eventually feel that maybe they should go for it themselves and get a little bit of that extra map presence. But for the time being, it's back down to a kind of stalemate pace as far as it goes. Yes, the Golden Experience are in favor of Tiburones, but nobody's really trying to exploit that lead as of now. Everybody's just more accustomed to keeping their farm game going over anything else.
This Pridwin finish from Gamma is actually maybe going to be a good moment for things to really shift for the Winter Dogs, just because all of a sudden he's going to be able to ult in and be a part of this fight for a little bit longer, but hadn't necessarily worked out incredibly well for them each time. But I think it could cause, well, at least a little bit of trouble for the Tiburones in terms of trying to burn down the Ares. Of course, they have to fight for that to be the case, and ultimately has to have the gold for the Pridwin to be able to get there. And it seems like they're more than content to just kind of relax as of right now.
But is relaxing kind of where the Tiburones need to be, or do they need to start maybe making some more efforts to try and keep pushing this gold lead?
Well, getting that Oni Fury was good for the Tiburones. Winter Dogs are the ones that are a little more concerning to me because they kind of just let that be. I guess recognizing, again, their composition as of right now, look, it's not going to do much. We're 18 minutes into the game. It can get a little bit done, but they'd still like at least like another, say, item maybe picked up for them. They'd really, really love to prolong this game, similar to last time. Maybe not quite the same length, and they don't want to be down nearly as much as they were, which good news is they're on trajectory for that. But as long as the Tiburones are playing at this pace, maybe you're going to lose a Pyromancer, and ultimately that's not the end of the world for you to lose up here, but BennyQ losing his life could mean a lot more.
Heat gonna push him against the wall and force the leap out. He gets taunted back in by the alluring spirits and now is in danger. Had to use his Sentinel of Zeus, but Cope diving into the backline. He's at half health, goes up for the ultimate. Maybe look to see if he can execute or just go for the escape. Kirmi falling low and Spreed having to dive away. Cope lands down from the hovering death, uses his beads instantly. Kirmi's gonna get a nice proc from the shield. Cope not gonna get the final blow. Kirmi able to make it out, and Sybil the one in danger. Now BennyQ throwing some damage back. Heat stuck through, taunted back in by the spirits, and Wowie and Gamma able to take him down.
That's such a huge kill to get. Look, everybody's incredibly low, and anybody else could have died there, but I think getting rid of Heed, after watching what Heed just did, I mean, Heed is the engage for the Tiburones, Heed is the re-engage for the Tiburones, Heed re-engages a third time in that fight. Like, it just feels like he goes in, makes sure someone like gets set up for his team, peels for someone to get out, goes back in, gets some boxing done, and like it felt like such a crucial pick to get rid of this Nike. And with 30 seconds no longer having to deal with it, I want to see the pivot. I mean, why are you on the left-hand side of the map? Maybe you get this purple buff, but go for the Pyromancer and try to get something on the map to give you a little more pressure, a little more anything in terms of trying to control at least some of what the Tiburones have been able to do, plus chip away at that gold lead. Granted, you're also in a spot, you have to look at it, they don't have a lot of secure on the side of the Winter Dogs right now. Even a little bit of aggression onto an objective can be bad for them if they don't play it right. And so I think ultimately still trying to patiently play their way towards an equal level, make sure that nobody's going to be too far behind, but also be willing to drop their ults. I don't think I saw Kirmi, like it lasted a long time before Kirmi dropped their ult in that fight, which kind of caught me off guard because I kept looking at him like, all right, and now he grabbed someone. Okay, no, and now he grabbed someone. So I'm curious to see if they're, I don't want to say if their patience wears thin, because it was well played for them either way.
One thing I'm also curious on was Cope looked like he had that kill secured in the bag, and as soon as he went for the Soul Reap, that sweeping silence, he got silenced out himself by this Anquile, and I'm curious as to what damage proc that Anquile from Kirmi to where it actually stopped him from getting the silence through, and that, I think, is what actually saved his life there, was the fact that that Soul Reap did not hit. So I'm curious, maybe it was does Mystical Mail Mystical Mail is magical damage, if I'm not mistaken, the ticks from it.
Yeah, it is magical damage.
Does that proc the Anquile, or is it only from a god's abilities? I don't.
You know, I'm gonna be honest with you.
Actually,
I haven't tested specifically Mystical Mail versus Anquile. That's actually an interesting one to look at.
Okay, so it is an enemy ability.
Enemy ability, yeah. So it had to have been a hit. I mean, honestly, with the way things were going, I wouldn't be too surprised if Spreen had accidentally, well, like a little, like even just a little bit of damage, but a little bit of damage out there is going to be more than enough. It also could be one of those weird things where like Mystical Mail's tick might be counted as God, like as ability from God, depending on how it reads. Like it's one of the, like sometimes weird things like that happen. I don't know. I want to go test it. We'll figure it out.
Maybe somebody already has, and we're just kind of wasting all the time for it. And someone has.
Hey,
maybe. Hey,
you know what? Don't tag me for the skins thing that they were talking about, but tag me for this.
Yeah, if you know if that's the answer for it, go ahead and tag one of us for it. Tag Gormizer maybe, or you can even tag me. Gamma.
No, just me.
Just you? Okay, I see how it is. Gamma with the.
I need interactions. They validate me.
Gamma with a 3-man ultimate, but doesn't get anything except a couple of sets of beats. So maybe that's not, doesn't get anything. That's a huge boon for him, able to grab 3 sets with that. But now they are 3 ultimates down on the side of Winter Dogs and only 2 on the side of Tiburones.
I mean, this is a clean spot to be in, especially when you look at it. First off, 8 or 9 pairs of beads. Admittedly, Sybils and Heeds being down maybe aren't the end-all, be-all, but I still think being able to get rid of one of those two is going to be very, very crucial for them. Make them burn their ults, make them feel awkward in the middle of a fight would be very solid for them. CC immunity in Spreen's ult, as well as Spreen still having beads, means that it's just difficult to kill off Renjaro or them, but this is like a complete flip-flop of last time, right? Like, Tiburones were in such a dynamic amount of control, and now they just seem too timid to get aggressive into where the Winter Dogs want to fight.
I just realized that WoWie didn't go for a traditional bow as second item, actually went for the Aussie immediately after the Iqbal, so getting a little bit of extra lifesteal in this build, which is traditionally where the bow build kind of falters, and maybe BennyQ will fall here. Cope and 3 others from the Sharks chasing him down. BennyQ low within execute threshold, and Cope will make sure to dunk down and get that kill. Now Gamma in danger, and Renjaro picks him up in it. Aquarius in the middle of 5 and nowhere to left to run. Renjaro picks him up. Kirmi over the wall. WoWie trying to run away, but Heat is bullying him within the jungle, able to keep him pushed back. But that Aussie is keeping him alive for so long. But all the while, Cope Baby fell down in all of the fight. Kirmi was able to get a kill against him, but WoWie, I'm not even sure if WoWie can make it out of here.
No, look, you're not doing enough damage to Heed to be able to find that kill. And if you stay in that fight too much longer, he will decimate you. Kirmi doesn't have enough mana to continue the peel. In fact, now Kirmi might be the one who ended up going up maybe too aggressive. This is going to be a free FG.
Leave him alone. Okay.
So I say free. They paid Cope's life.
Oh no. Oh no. We lost Cope. We lost our assassin who got his kill.
He did exactly what he needed to in the fight.
I went in. I got kill. I died. We got Fire Giant for it, and he, playing the bully, zoned 2 of them away. WoWie and Kirmi both had to deal with this Nike that is just constantly in their face, making sure that they could not go back to base, could not go back to try and defend that Fire Giant.
I mean, that is not only well played because he kept them engaged, but also showcases again how much I think Heat is one of the bigger problems to have to deal with on this squad. I mean, you're looking at that. Admittedly, BennyQ just got caught out, and there's no other way to cut that one. He was caught out from the beginning, and they were going to commit to that Tiamat. No matter what happened, they wanted BennyQ to die. And it just happened to be fortunate that Tiburones managed to walk away more than happy with the end of the engagement. But once you see Heat get involved, all of a sudden there's a massive slow. Everyone's getting zoned. You just can't get anything done. I feel like if this Nike is permitted to continue this route, there's not much that the Winter Dogs are going to be able to do. They have to deal with Heat early.
Well, Tiburones in a similar position to where they were in game number 1, as they've got 3 towers left to burn. It's an extra 4,500 gold they can add to their pockets, and the Winter Dogs, they're not fully committed to full defending this tier 2 tower. It looks like they may just walk away and let this one go down and maybe look towards defending at Phoenix, if that is so the call of Tiburones to push forward, but instead they will just grab the tier 2 left and now maybe make their way over towards that mid lane. Cope already there is going to make sure to push some of these waves ahead. And look at Cope's build, going for this full Glass Cannon Thanatos, a very early Blood Forge, a third item, a very expensive item to pick up.
Yeah, and honestly, it's in this mindset of Cope, like you had said, go in, as long as I get my kill, that's fine. Like, I'm more than happy to be able to get it, and it's a lot of damage that helps burn through someone like Benny.
Gamma goes in, finds 4 with the ultimate, but doesn't pull anybody in. Instead, he just pulls his own doom. Renjaru takes him down. Cope dunks in the backline, finds 1. Renjaru with the double kill. Cope looking for one under the Phoenix and will find it, but trades his life as Kirmi trades it out for it. But it's just Kirmi and BennyQ now to defend against 4 members of Tiburones, as the mid Phoenix is not much longer for this world.
I mean, Kirmi, BennyQ, look, it's decent damage, but I don't know if they have what it takes to stand up to the Tiburones right now.
Sybil and Renjaru are going to be the main ones to be looking at here for the front line and the main damage dealer. In the back line goes Kirmi, gets a taunt against 2 of them. BennyQ fires some good damage back. Renjaru is low. BennyQ dives in aggressively, goes for the spin, and the Consume will be enough damage for it. Now Spreen has to use the Aegis. Benny chasing him out. Kirmi able to pick up Sybil. BennyQ still chasing down Spreen, and Kirmi looking for heat. Benny with the double kill. They defend the base and push them out.
Well, I stand corrected, and I'm more than happy to do so. What a great set of plays from Benny and Kirmi to be able to pick that up and continuing the chase. I mean, they've got Heed isolated right now. I don't know how much I like this from Kirmi. I mean, I don't know what you're going to be able to get done, but you're keeping them from backing. Last man standing with the FG. You managed to balance that out. That felt, and honestly should have been, demise for the Winter Dogs, but that's twice now. Let's say around 27, 28 minutes where the Tiburones with Fire Giant get in there, burn down a mid-Phoenix. The Titan gets a little lower than people would be comfortable with, and yet they don't end the game. And so I think this is a good spot for the Winter Dogs, because ultimately their builds are starting to come online. Yeah, they burned a few relics in the last engagement that still aren't up, but with so much time to work with, so much space to work with still online, they're going to be able to rotate in. That Fire Giant means nothing now.
28 minutes in, and this is where we finally see the fight back from Winter Dogs, able to keep the Tiburones. I can't say keep them out of the base, because they did take down the mid Phoenix, and they
were in the base.
well over half the Titans' health. It's not a particularly fun spot to be in for the Winter Dogs, but able to take Fire Giant off of every single person from Tiburones. Now, granted, a little bit early, Fire Giant was just about to fall back off, but Tiburones, they're not going to step off the gas just yet. Instead, they'll go ahead and take the Fury. That'll drop that one down, and now they can look towards this left side Phoenix that is up, but without that Fire Giant, they are going to need the help of that minion wave that's pushed up.
I think this is one of those moments where things get very, very awkward. You need wards, and you need them everywhere, because look at this grouping from Tiburones. They have a clear path into a very, very low Titan. All they need is one kill, and that's enough.
BennyQ walking out of your base at this point may just be his death, but he's got enough lifesteal to stay alive. Not for much longer. Cope able to get one in the revive from Sybil as soon as he landed. Keeps Cope Baby back in this fight. Gamma falls down. Double kill for Cope. Now looking at Wowie standing at the tier 2 tower. Cope Baby picks up the triple kill. Kirmi falls down. That's one for Inchar with only Aquarius left. Tiburones take 4 off the map, and they're going to push into end game number 2.
I mean, that is just clean. Cope, look, as much as I want to shout out Cope, that is Sybil who wins that fight for them. There is, and you actually roll it back. Gonna throw him under the bus before I compliment him. Sybil lost the fight in the Titan room because they missed. I can't remember if it was Cope or who was low, but they ended up throwing their ult onto the wrong target. Very difficult because they were standing right next to each other, and ends up wearing out. Spreen is the one who eventually ends up walking away after that ult goes down, and well, we saw how that did. BennyQ chased him down. That time around, gets it just before Cope goes up into the air, right as that tick pulls him right back down into the fight. Good enough health, and the Blood Forge comes in handy. The healing from Thanatos passive, everything just stacked up at the end to push that Thanatos to the forefront.
I honestly thought BennyQ was dead to rights guaranteed. That lifesteal kept him in, but didn't keep him alive for long enough. Winter Dogs fall down here. We're going to go to Game 3 here shortly after this break. number 3 is where we're about to hit here for the second set of the day, and for the second time today as well, as Tiburones this time able to clinch the game for themselves and bring us here towards this game number 3. I'm J Mac Tucker. With me one more time is Gormizer as we get ready to hop into it and kind of talk about a little bit of the breakdown of where everything kind of just went wrong for the Winter Dogs there in those last couple fights.
I feel like maybe there's a little bit of draft that you could look at and maybe contribute to some of that. Like, as much as it sucks, like there were a lot of Hunter bans, I don't feel like we got as much out of the Danzaburo as we would have in the same position if it had been something like a ROM, but unfortunately there's not much you could do about that in that spot. I think a lot of it comes down to this Khepri. Honestly, I think Cope had a great performance, but I don't know that Cope is able to pop off that hard if it's not for this Khepri. And I feel like, and this is twice in a row where we've seen some success from the Cerberus Ares combo, but not enough that I'm like really ready to see it a third time. I don't think it's been the engage that they wanted to be, even though it's forcing a lot of relics. There's just too many CC immune ults on the other side that keep getting locked in, and the Ares hasn't, and the Cerberus haven't really been able to find a whole ton. I mean, look at all these highlights. Every single time they go in, they're almost virtually killed immediately. And you also have to say something about Vinny. Unfortunately, I think like twice this game in 2 big fights ends up getting burned down first and foremost, caught out just a little bit. And I think that's where a lot of the small issues were happening for the Winter Dogs. I think that ultimately, if I'm going to the draft, probably looking immediately at the Khepri, changing out maybe the Ares for something else, but ultimately, I think there's some positional things in-game as well to be addressed.
I think a couple of highlights back was a perfect example of what happens to an Ares late game. He goes in, he grabs 4 people. He had 4 people chained with the ultimate, and what did all 4 of those players do? Oh, you're just an Ares. You're just sitting there. What are you going to do to us? Immediately turn and burn him, and then just as quickly as he went in for that ultimate, he was met with the fountain and sitting in the grayscale screen for a while. But getting that nice little pickup there against Benny Q, catching him at... I almost don't even want to call it out of position because he was where Tier 2 Tower would have been. But at that point in time for it, I guess that could be considered out of position. Gets caught. Cope Baby gets a kill thanks to the help of Sybil getting that revive against them. Make sure it's a way they can stay alive and keep that fight going and get a nice triple kill to kind of close things out.
Yeah, it's so weird now because their bans had been, they're like the Osiris, they'd picked up the Terra, they had banned out Serket the game 1. It feels weird to say that maybe you need to ban out a Khepri, but I don't know where you can fit that in. They picked him in the top 3 for the Tiburones, so it's a really awkward spot to try and shuffle around. I'm really curious to see how Winter Dogs are going to adjust this picks and bans because it feels like it's just enough of an edge for the Tiburones so far. Just enough coming out of the picks and bans in the draft that when the fights are going even, they're pulling just ahead each time, and that stacks up.
Eventually that will stack to be a little bit too much for them as we get ready to hop into picks and bans for game number 3 between the Winter Dogs and Tiburones de Tijuana. You're talking a little bit about maybe getting rid of this Ares, maybe try and trade that something out, maybe just get rid of the Khepri as a whole because that did seem to provide them a little bit too much danger. The problem is, do you slot that Khepri as a ban here early on, or if you're the Winter Dogs, do you maybe just take that one from here first pick?
I would like the Khepri more than I would like them picking Ares again. Like, I feel like each Ares we've seen has been either I think the most efficient ult we've seen from an Ares today has been a single pull. I don't think we've gotten any multi-pulls, and a lot of it is because so game 1 they draft it in their top 3 and there's still 3 picks for the Tiburones to lock in on the other side, and they can go, cool, well, this guy's got CC immunity, this guy can get knock-up immune, there's we don't have to worry about it on these 3 gods now. And they had picked up, what was it prior to that? They had already had Raijin on their squad, they were not really stressed too much about it. And so I think that they need to adjust either when they're picking him or completely scrap the pick at this point.
Speaking of scrapping picks, they're going to scrap their own Tiamat and take that one away from Benny Q, banning that in the first phase alongside the Artemis. So the Terra doesn't get banned in game number 3. It was one of the pivotal points here for Tiburones in game 1, got banned away in game 2, and instead leaves an Osiris open as a first pick. Well, the Tiburones, they didn't change their bans any. It's the same 3 that you saw in games 1 and 2 with the Hell, Artio, and Yamoja. And in response, Tiburones immediately, since it didn't get banned away, they're going to grab Terra in phase 1.
And I actually really like this. Osiris, I have a bone to pick with him. I'll get to him in a little bit. But Terra and Raijin, I think, is a really, really good return for the Tiburones. The Terra looked great in Game 1 despite the loss. The Raijin has looked good both games. But the Osiris is the one that I have to tackle in on because I feel like he is gone. And it might be different for the SCC than it is in the SBL, but at least when we watch playoffs, he lost 10 of the 12 games he played in the playoffs. He was awful. But he was still someone that was getting first pick. He was banned every single game of like Leviathan's bolts. So he has a lot of pressure on him to perform, and yet isn't meeting those performances in a lot of those cases. So I'm curious if the Winter Dogs are going to be one of the winning performances for an Osiris, or another tack on to potentially being overrated as of right now.
Well, along with the Osiris, it'll be a Cupid and a Cerberus locked in for Winter Dogs, and Tiburones, they're not going to really change much of their draft. They get a Terra for the support role, and then they get a Raijin and a Thanatos. So you can go. So Cope can one more time try and repeat his performance of game number 2 here in this third game. And as the first bans come through, it's going to be Soul and the Morrigan actually banned away here alongside of it. Nike? Okay, no, Nike actually makes sense. Nike makes it after what he did to them, pushing 2 people away by himself and how tanky he was. Okay, Nike absolutely makes sense here.
Nike I can get on board for. Honestly, it's weird because like Benny Q, we had mentioned this earlier, like if I'm Benny, I'm not going to be surprised if he just locks in Merlin. Go back to the highlight reel at the very beginning. Like, there's so much that's available for the mid laner. I don't think he's going to be too stressed about what they're picking up. They get the Hachiman, though, which I'm interested to see the matchup between the Cupid. Especially because Cupid, like, let's talk about that Cupid. First off, that's such a high lock-in. Like, it's not outlandish in my mind for Wowie to pick up a Cupid, but to pick up a Cupid that high up is insane to me.
Okay, Cupid. Yeah, cool, Cupid, he's awesome. We see some players pick him up. Anubis? Anubis!
So what was that conversation they were having in set 1 where Mifflin was like asking which gods have abilities that root themselves?
Right here. Oh yeah, Kabrakan also. We forgot about Kabrakan in that call too. With the tremors, he can root himself with it.
And so they've got 2 of them on that team now?
Right. And then a Gilgamesh is a 10th pick. What world are we living in right now, Cormiser?
It's a fun one, man.
Look, Aquarius had a good performance with the Kabrakan last week against the Herculean Hooves. Is one of the big things they got a winning point for. But this Anubis is such an interesting pickup here by the Winter Dog. Are they just drafting it because it's their team name?
What's the over-under that Benny Q goes blink? No beads, no Aegis early on. Locks in with a blink immediately.
I think second relic blink.
Second relic blink? Second. I don't know, man. Well, hold on. Let me look at this team comp real fast.
Okay. You need it for Terra. Need it for Thanatos. You
kind of need it for Terra.
It for Gilgamesh.
You definitely. Okay, you know what? You definitely need it for Thanatos. You didn't have me until you said Thanatos. I was thinking, like, if I'm in a matchup, like, if I'm me and I see a Raijin on the other side and I'm Anubis, I'm going blink, and I'm going to kill that dude every day of the week. His beads are going to be on cooldown no matter what, because I'm going to blink on him whenever it is up, and I'm going to sash him, and I'm going to burn him. But I think, he might have to play it safe.
Will it be the beads, or will it be the blink for this mid-lane Anubis in game number 3? Let's hop right on and see, and it's going to be a Purification Beads. Going to play it safe as far as his first relic goes. But the one fun thing we get to see is potential for a Sacrificial Shroud out of him maybe late game.
Well, you know what? I like this build as well because so Anubis and wow, we don't get to talk about this often. This feels
gonna
weird.
Be fun.
His passive is real good for lifesteal, as it turns out, and so being able to pick up lifesteal, like he is one of the few gods in this game that you could see. With the exception of Aussie. Aussie does this for hunters pretty well. We saw that Wowie happen, where you get really low, and then you can just reset back to full health with the right scenario. Benny Q, in this game, I almost bet we will see it once, where he just goes burned down almost immediately, and then back to full HP, whether it's from an ult, whether it's from his 3, whether it's from the Plague of Locusts. It's just so interesting to watch the way it synergizes with it, because of the way his passive works. It's just so clean. But at the same time, as we said earlier, he roots himself for literally every ability that he throws out, like except for his 2. And so that makes things... Oh yeah, I guess he doesn't root himself for his 3. Okay, so all the really big ones, and the ones that matter in my brain apparently, are the ones that he roots himself for. We'll have to see how that fares, especially against Thanatos. I mean, that's just such an easy scythe target.
Look, it feels like he roots himself because he always goes for the wrap and then you throw the 3 down, and then you ult in the process. So it looks like that's all part of one big package combination for it. Maybe that's kind of the
2-3-1 is all just actually one ability in my brain.
You press 2, and the other ones just naturally come out alongside of it. That's just how it goes amongst all of it.
God, I love playing Anubis. Like, I'm just going to gush about it. Like, Anubis is maybe my favorite god to play. He's like my guilty pleasure because I feel bad when I do it, but he's so fun when you have a good game. When you have a bad game, you feel awful. But when you have a great game, J-Mac,
the last time that I played a good Anubis. The last time I played Anubis in Conquest, I think it was during a playtest actually, and it was Taco and Lermy on the enemy team as
I'm sure you had
as a solo wheelish against me. I died.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Because of that route that comes through. Also,
Trust me. What you said, that was a redundant sentence. You said,
right.
I was Anubis versus Taco and Lermy, and then you said I died a lot. You said the same thing twice.
Okay, you know what? That's fair. I could have just said either one of those names, and that would have been more than enough. But then I'd like triple down on it. But it's gonna be fun to see what happens with this Anubis as it goes through. Again, maybe just living up to the look. They needed to draft the Fenrir to complete the trio to be the winner dogs. Right now they've got 2, so they are still plural amongst them. One is a 3-headed dog, so I guess you can say there's 4 of them with it. But I think it's an oversight here, the fact they didn't get Fenrir to complete the trio.
I'm trying to figure out where I want to go with that, but Cope's getting damaged.
Yeah, Cope is getting smacked, but a dropkick from Heat might be enough to save his life. Cope getting low, needs that death side to come back up, but he's so slow. Kirimi trying to hunt him down as well as Aquarius needs to turn around, but doesn't get it in time. Kirimi gets first blood, but he may be in danger. The leap is good. Aquarius is here for it, but the drop kick slams him right into the back of his dome, and he trades it out for 1.
Aquarius just away from being able to find the peel there. Ultimately still gets first blood, though, for Kirimi, which is probably a little more worthwhile for them. But at the end of the day, you've still got 2 level 3 junglers. That's only going to be a little bit of gold. Still helpful for an Osiris. Early game, going to be very, very solid for him. I'm curious to see where Kirimi is going to put that pressure now that they've got a good kill. Specifically onto Cope, slowing down this Thanatos could be monumental. I mean, Thanatos last game, Cope was in your back camps 90% of the time, and just wait until that blue diamond on the right fills up. Once that ult is available, guess what he's going to be doing again? Probably going for your back camps one more time. And so I expect a lot out of this Osiris now, especially being able to get something like first blood early.
There's so much nonsense going on here. We didn't even address the fact that this is a Cabrakan support and not going to the solo lane. This is Aquarius.
J-Mac, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't even notice there was a Cabrakan. All right,
we had to talk of Cupid for a brief moment, then we had Anubis, which is pretty much the only talking point that we've had for the last 3 or so minutes. It just dawned on me that not only did we have Cabrakan in this game, but it's Cabrakan support. Maybe you see it put to a little bit of use here. Spreen has to use the beads and has the Thunder Crash to get himself out it. But now with those beads down, that is a nice and juicy target for Benny Q in that mid lane.
But Benny Q did have to use his ult, so a little bit of damage, at least his burn potential early game, is going to disappear with that. That's the only issue with Anubis is like you've got a good amount of damage. Speaking of good damage.
Fields of Love will catch him out, and the walls make sure that there is absolutely nowhere for Sybil to go. A second kill on the board for Winter Dogs, and they could look towards 3, but the walls are still standing to make sure that Cope will be able to get out safely for the time being, but Oracle Harpies also go the way of Winter Dogs.
I'm excited to see how this continues. Pythag's piece is the first pickup there for the Anubis. I'm going to be honest, I would have taken several bets and gotten all of them wrong as to which item you were going to start, especially because he started with Tiny Trinket. And so I was going to assume either Bancroft's, I mean, eventually, I wouldn't be surprised if that gets in there. Yeah, Typhon's Fang, eventually. I maybe wouldn't have said Typhon's immediately. But Pythags wasn't immediately in my mind. But I actually really like this. Good for the Osiris, good for the team as a whole, but also fits well with pretty much only Anubis. I guess there's a couple of other gods that you could pick a Pythags piece on that it's not going to be the end of the world, but not a lot of people that synergize with it as well. And so I'm going to keep my eye on Benny Q, especially because I wonder where this build's going to go, and I wonder how he's going to perform. Because so far there hasn't been any return pressure onto him.
I just had a random thought that popped in my head here, Core. So we got 2 gods who can both like create and break their own walls and whatnot, but they can't break each other's walls. Could you imagine if Terra could break other gods' walls? I mean, she's the mother of Earth. Surely she should be able to break other people's walls. Like just dash through Cabrakan wall, it breaks one of them down?
I guess it depends on whether or not their walls are made of Earth.
Well, he is using more cars in this one, I think. So maybe in the skin matchup there, it would be a win for him.
Then we get to like Avatar: The Last Airbender, where metal is just like
another form of it's just another version of it. BennyQ's in danger. Well, not really a whole lot of danger. He's got his ultimate, but Cope will dunk down right on top and maybe prove to make it a little bit of danger. Lifesteal not quite good enough. Gamma is holding Sybil. Sybil cannot get out of these tremors. He is trying as hard as he can. Will manage to make it out with Spreen, but Cope not going to be as fortunate as he will fall down with the rotation from Kiermi.
I'm trying to figure out what's more impressive there. The fact that so many people got that low and we only had one death that occurred from it, or the fact that BennyQ got out alive. It feels like he got away with murder in that event, but still able to walk away. Did have to burn his beads, but ends up killing the enemy jungler for it. So at the end of the day, I think you're more than happy with it. A good save from Kiermi with that rotation as well. BennyQ with good jukes to make sure things stay available for them. They get good damage out there. I think it goes to showcase, look, you give them an inch, I think this team comp is going to run over you. But that's the downside. They have to be ahead. I'm looking at like Anubis, even behind, he can deal some good damage, but like a Bracken, I don't think they're going to have the same punch if they start to fall behind here. So they need to keep the pressure up.
Heat has found 3.
He'll
use his beads instantly. Winja Shamash dropped. Ultimate from Aquarius will throw him even further back. Leaps directly in place to get the knockback against Kiermi. Kicks him right against the tower line, but Kiermi's not the one tanking the tower. It's Aquarius. So Kiermi's able to turn it around and get the kill, taking down Heed.
If Aquarius is not tanking that tower, at least Heed's pulling back one. That's a good play from Heed. Even though I normally don't like the up-down. I don't know that there's much escaping from your fate there. So I like the way that they play that. Again, just to try and get some sort of turnaround. Unfortunately, now you've got a 3-1 Osiris on the other side. Cope was up 4 levels, I believe, at one point last game. Now Kiermi has the level lead in the jungle, and this Osiris is going to be much more problematic than the Thanatos was. You can already see Kiermi's been a lot more active than I feel like we've gotten to see him in both games so far. And I like the way that they're playing this. If they can continue this amount of aggression, and Lord of the Afterlife's available for them as well, it's just going to open up a lot of opportunities for the team.
BennyQ full clearing the way very quickly in mid. He'll be able to go back and start towards his second item. What will it be? It looked like he's going towards some extra lifesteal, so Talon Trinket. So now we might see either that Bancroft's or the Typhon's Fang coming through for him, and such is the benefit of the Anubis is his passive, as you highlighted earlier, talks a lot about giving some extra lifesteal, giving some extra penetration. So we'll see where BennyQ's build eventually lines out for himself. More than anything, I'm just hoping that we do get to see this game get to that level 20 mark so we can see if he actually goes for Sacrificial Shroud or if he just ends up going for that Blood Soak.
Oh, you said level 20, and I was like, I just want to see level 12. I want to see if he's going to go Aegis or Blink.
That's fair. That's the more important pressing matter.
Yeah, my goal is much smaller in scope than yours is, which is just to see if BennyQ's going to meme on us or not. And honestly, I don't really consider it that much of a meme. I actually really like Blink Anubis.
Gamma caught in danger, has to walk away, throws the walls to keep Sybil and try and keep Cope away, but hovering death means that Cope can go just about anywhere he wants, but he lands right down in the Fields of Love, catches 3 of them with it. Wowie, able to walk away. Kiermi trying to zone, goes in with the dunk, only finds Spreen in the process of it, manages to grab 1 with it, so it's going to be 1 kill so far, but will Kiermi be able to make it out? Gamma's trying his best to zone, but Cope is not going to get zoned out much longer. Heed will pick up Kiermi with the help of him, and Cope picks up an extra kill, making it a 2-for-2 trade, and maybe still looking for more.
I mean, BennyQ, your cooldowns have to be coming up. He's got plenty of mana. Yeah, that's going to be the rotation you need. Sybil should go down. Aquarius gets a good rotation to get a double kill as well. Very good cleanup for them. It's unfortunate that Kiermi falls. I think you're okay sacrificing Gamma in that kind of fight. Kiermi has been doing really well, so that was a good bounty for the Tiburones to pick up. But now, even better, with Wowie and Benny alive, you should be able to burn a Fury.
Starting up the Fury is Wowie and Benny, and they will pass it back and forth for a little bit, but Benny will just throw out some abilities to make sure that they can take this Fury. And this is one of the benefits of having an Anubis, is one of the best objective shredders in the game. Maybe not as far as securing it goes for it, but he definitely can shred down objectives like no one's business.
And we got to see, that was without ult. I think when you add ult into the mix, yeah, it's going to make things a little more difficult for them. Did have to burn the beads. I think this is where I want to see the Tiburones start to be, I keep using this phrase, but more proactive, man. Like, the beads are down on a really immobile target, and yeah, he's got the Typhons. Yeah, he's got a Pythax piece. You're going to have to burn through the lifesteal, but Thanatos does 3/4 of your HP in one ability. You should be able to do it along with the silence. He's rooted. It's going to be very easy. I want to see Cope get aggressive on the BennyQ and make him feel uncomfortable.
And right now, there's no anti-heal response from the side of Tiburones. And to me, that is a crime. You're going against an Anubis. You build lifesteal. That god is essentially I'm not going to say he's useless. He still does a lot of damage. But he's not going to live through that damage he's able to put out as compared to if you would have had some of that anti-heal available. Looks like Spreen may be going towards it, has that Enchanted Spear, so he can see an early Divine Rune. But I'm honestly a little surprised that Cope didn't just go for a Brawlers right out the gate.
Yeah, something like either a Brawlers. Like it's one of those weird moments where it's like you need to commit to it, but not so heavily that you're picking up like an Ankh. And admittedly, maybe 2 members go anti-heal, but like you shouldn't have everybody. Like it's that really weird like, how heavy do we lean into this? Granted, Cupid Hearts also play into that, so you do have to factor in some other healing, but it's maybe not going to be the end-all be-all. I think whoever's going to be targeting specifically BennyQ the most needs to figure that out. And Divine Ruins get picked up by Spreen, so that's a really good pickup for them, just in general, but also for that matchup. But they still need to be able to get aggressive. So far, BennyQ hasn't necessarily stepped out into a spot where they're able to get aggressive, but I haven't really seen Cope show up in the mid lane, save for these big team like fight engagements.
You know, Spreen picking this up, I mean, that's probably the most obvious choice. You want to get the long-range mage to be able to get it, but Spreen's been the target of this Anubis, and if you can't get that damage off, you're not able to get that Divine Ruin proc for it. We'll see how some of these further fights go. Beads are back up for Spreen, so if that wrap combo comes back out, Spreen could escape it and then start to apply some of that anti-heal towards BennyQ. But BennyQ sitting on an enhanced red buff for the time being. That's going to be a lot of extra power his way. Cope just has to cure out the jungle, and while they're looking for fights, at least Kirmi is, he's going to push Spreen back. Aquarius gets the ult out of Cope, baby. He's going to have to go back towards base, and, well, Spreen, he'll take the fast trip back as it's a Tier 2 tower dive.
Now they get the Tier 1 after the dive. They get the Tier 2. They have the minion wave. They might be able to push this Tier 2 as well. Cope being forced away.
That's
20 seconds without Spreen. I mean, even if you're able to make a good rotation into this fight, you don't have a lot of pressure that you can apply to the Winter Dogs, and you have to look at it. Rinjaru's run the other way.
Oh, the walls hold him inside the Fields of Love. The combo comes through one more time. Wowie. Getting the credit for the kill, extending the gold lead now to 6,200. Tier 1 and Tier 2 fall, along with Spreen and Sybil throughout all of that. Rinjaru trying to mitigate some of that gold lead for them by looking at the Tier 1 tower, but he won't even go for it. He'll just lead the minions and head back towards base. Meanwhile, we now have a level 14 Anubis. I'm waiting to see Benny go back to base to see what he gets.
Yeah, 2 levels up over Spreen, has had a much more impactful performance. 1-0-6 for their mid laner, 5-2-2 right now there for Kirmi. And so both of them being a much bigger factor. This is the first game I feel like we've seen this entire time where the Winter Dogs have had a lead this early on. Most of the last 2 games, they were, well, massively behind in Game 1, slightly behind in Game 2. And this is a comp that is designed to do this. I mean, not only get ahead, but to take that lead and really just hammer it home, constantly remind you how behind you are. And admittedly, the longer it goes on, a little weaker there probably from BennyQ, just because, again, lack of mobility in the late game. Maybe a little weaker from Gamma, just because the nature of Bracken as a support versus what Terra brings in. But ultimately, it's not a comp that falls off that hard. They're actually going to do just fine.
I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I did the Aegis.
Yeah, you saw it too. I'm disappointed. He could have had a Blink Anubis. We could have had some fun, but BennyQ wanted to be safe and go with Aegis. He
wanted to win the game.
He wanted to be smart and win the game and play safely. How dare you? You picked Anubis and you're not going Blink? Unbelievable. And instead it'll be a Charon's coin to tag along with that Aegis to give him a little bit of percent pen. And Kirmi is looking to bully Cope some more. It's a reverse here. Last game Cope was level 14, Kirmi was 11. Now it's the shoes on the other foot for her. Cope has to ult away again.
That's twice.
Trying to run away. Kirmi is chasing him down. The tether actually holding on to him the whole way through. But Cope back under the Tier 2 on this left side. Aquarius and Gamma even rotate over to maybe try and make something happen.
I feel like I could still hear the comms. With Aquarius and Gamma, like, right outside the Tier 2, they wanted to dive. Like, I could feel that they wanted to. They just recognized they didn't have the follow-up. Ultimately still call it back and pull away. But this is, and remarkably, a very similar position we saw the Tiburones in game number 1. I think it was 10-3 for the kills, maybe something similar to that at least. And enough of a gold lead around the same mark, 8,000, kind of pushing forward. and there was still a good turnaround from the Winter Dogs. And so I look at, you know, as awkward as it is 15 minutes in, start looking at like Phoenix defenses and fights around the FG. That's where they have to start focusing on it, because right now they're missing 2 of their tier 2s, and 1 in mid, 1 in left. And I think it's all right. When you have Terra, it's good. That's enough for you, but not so great with Thanatos, depending on where he's able to get engaged, as well as like Hachiman doesn't necessarily have the best time, doesn't really have the worst time defending. And so I think the Tiburones have a lot going for them. More so the siege on the Winter Dogs is going to be oppressive with how much engage they have. That makes the conversation even more awkward, because I think it's going to be a fight around the FG and burn. Winter Dogs win that one.
It's been a little bit of a rough game here for the Tiburones. Sybil, in fact, just hitting level 10 right, like, not even 15 seconds ago. Still not level 12, obviously, with it, so he won't have access to a second relic. Meanwhile, Gamma, when he went back to base, bought a full upgraded Curse Donk to try and shut down some of the healing that Sybil can provide for him in those fights, to try and do a little bit of extra team-wide damage when that heal does come through. Gives them a little bit of extra shred. The Pyromancer, he won't have any benefits. The Winter Dog's able to take it down, as well as that Fury on the left-hand side, and further extend their gold lead. Now 9,000 gold up, over 500 gold a minute that the Winter Dogs have been able to amass themselves versus Tiburones.
I mean, that is comfortable at this point in the game. 17 minutes with the draft that you have, this is exactly the kind of lead you need. I'm surprised to see that they're putting the pressure right now on mid, but I think it's just because the pivot and the sideline that they're going to make towards the Fire Giant could be massive for them. Instead, it's going into the jungle. I guess, yeah, there's a lot to invade. Go ahead, take whatever you can. Honestly, Tiburones aren't in much of a position to fight this far out. And if they're not prepared, they were prepared for the FG, but if you're not going to take it, you're not going to end up forcing them into what would be an otherwise prepared fight for them. Now they're kind of in this awkward position of defense once again.
Heat is able to solo out a Scorpion to at least give something over to Tiburones, but with this Fire Giant now under fire, or at least could potentially be under fire here by the Winter Dogs, as most players are starting to group around this right side of the map. Even Wowie finally making his rotation over that way. He'll be heading towards the mid lane, and Winter Dogs will be setting up to try and take this first major neutral objective off the map. Just shy of 20 minutes we're seeing this group up here for Fire. I think this is one of the earliest attempts that we've seen from these two teams. And the fact they've got Benny Q and Wowie, they've got an Anubis and a Cupid. Plenty of objective shredding. You can see it's already down to nearly half health. They're going to pull off it instantly to try and look for the Tiburones.
And I like this because you can see like that was the burn. Again, no Anubis ult thrown out there. It was just standard damage that is being done. Benny Q's being very careful and cautious as to what they throw out and watching their cooldowns. And so they're going to float in this limbo, secure for the Tiburones, a little bit more burst coming from Spreen, but they're looking for the fight.
Aquarius finds one with the ultimate, but Sybil able to get away. Heed looking for Benny Q, but the wrap comes through, and Heed doesn't have quite enough. Benny does get traded out as Cope able to pick him up, and Cope is looking for one more, but he gets stunned out, and Kirmi gets the kill. Gamma falling low, Gamma falling down. Renjaru grabs him, but now it's a 2v3, and Kirmi and Aquarius are both jumping in to try and take them down.
And this is where the damage can turn around. I mean, they're so low, but you still got Spreen, you still got Renjaru. That's a lot to be able to push back on the Winter Dogs.
Wow, we able to stay alive and healthy amongst all of it. Goes back. Benny Q didn't even get a chance to use his ultimate. The lifesteal didn't prove to be quite enough to keep him out of that execute threshold, and Cope was able to take him down in the middle of it all.
He's just a couple ticks from getting that off. I think that execute is a second later than all of a sudden Cope. First off, he maybe lands, maybe even gets the stun. Might be in an ulting Benny Q, though. And all of a sudden, things start to fall apart from there. So I think Cope has a good play and a good execute this time around. And admittedly, it does exactly what they need to, which is not win them some insane fight. It just mitigates the Fire Giant from being done so early that they win the game immediately, right? And ultimately, that's what the Tiburones have to do right now. You're playing catch-up as you try to alleviate the pressure that has been applied mainly in jungle, but there's still a level lead in mid. You're actually down if you're Wowie. He's the only one who's at a deficit as of right now. But even in solo, Heat has fallen behind here. So you're just trying to play that small amount of catch-up. And any time that you can waste of the Winter Dogs is good time for you.
And even being this far down, the fact they were able to not only fight back, but I'm going to call that essentially win that fight. If you're coming out even when you're 10,000 plus gold down, 10,000 plus experience down, it's a huge confidence boost for the Tiburones, and they're able to keep their dreams alive and keep this game alive for themselves, not giving up that objective. Benny Q, after dying and having to go back to base. He does pick up a Divine Ruin, so he's going to get a little bit of his own anti-heal, maybe try and counteract some of what Sybil and Cope maybe are able to do. Kirmi, well, he'll get kicked against the wall, and that'll be the end of that discussion as he immediately walks back at them.
Yeah, this is where things are, again, they're just weird if you're the Tiburones because you want to fight, you want to be aggressive, you don't really want to give the defensive positioning over to the Winter Dogs for the FG pit. But also, you don't have a leg to stand on, and there's no way that you're going to be able to do that. You just can't get as aggressive as you want to here. And so I think that the Winter Dogs controlling this much of the map, controlling this much of the game right now, is making things a little more awkward for them. Now is where things get more convoluted. Gold Fury is spawned up over on the left-hand side. Benny Q and Wowie are there. They could burn that very easily. But with 5 members approaching the Fire Giant, it'd be a very risky call.
Now, 5 minutes ago, Benny Q was sitting like 300 damage under Kirmi. Well, now Kirmi has about 3,000 more damage than him just from these little skirmishes, and Benny Q is just getting pretty much singled out by himself. Only one person is ever sent to really deal with him, and that's probably your best chance at fighting back against Anubis. Only send one person to try him, kill him at a time. Don't send the entire team. Well, you probably should send the entire team to just kill him. It is an Anubis. He is standing still, but by just sending only Heat after him, he didn't have a huge target to lifesteal off of, especially just because his damage is a little bit too low to try and get that extra healing.
It's definitely mitigated a lot of maybe some of the prowess that could happen from the Anubis, but I'm still surprised he only has 1 death, admittedly. Like
that is really fair.
What is stacked up on the other side, it feels like he should be getting chased down consistently, and so far they've been having trouble getting to him. The only death that happened was right there in the middle of the fray during a Fire Giant 18 minutes into the game, so I'm not too worried about what Benny Q has. Plus, both relics ult available right now. The next fight feels like it should be great for the Winter Dogs, and they just got 2 objectives for free without having to worry about really any pressure from the Tiburones. I mean, it's all onto this FG. You can see the positioning from the Tiburones. They don't want to give up a Fire Giant for free, but they're not really calling any shots this game.
It will be the Blood-Soaked Shroud for this Anubis. I was hoping for Sacrificial just because more damage, why not? You're already going to lose some of your health just by even the nature of standing still. Just get some extra power there, but instead it'll be some extra sustain for this Anubis to keep himself alive.
Oh,
Gamma goes in with the Blink Wall, catches Sybil out. Sybil has nowhere to go. Finally, we'll be able to break out, but he's so low in health. Aquarius picks him up, and Benny puts him down. He dives in the back line, but there's nowhere for him to go. Wowie able to clean up the kill, and now it's a 1v1 between Kirmi and Cope, and Cope says, nope, I'm on out of there, uses the ultimate, as well as Renjar, and they'll both retreat back to base.
I mean, that's just such a clean fight. Aquarius is absolutely a monster in the damage output that he was able to get behind the walls, but Gamma, with the setup, was so clean to find that. Good burn from Benny Q, and now, without a Fire Giant, they're going to be able to find a Phoenix, let alone what they're going to be able to do once they actually get the objective.
Phoenix down. Fire Giant available, 23.5 minutes in the game, and a 14,000 gold lead in favor of Winter Dogs now. That has been climbing further and further up. It feels like even with that last fight that the Tiburones had, where they were able to push them back, they didn't get anything off of it. They just kept them from doing Fire Giants. Well, sure, that keeps the lead from going even further beyond, but the Winter Dogs, they're able to take a Fire Giant after the fight that they had just taken on that right-hand side. And now with that around their belts, they can start looking towards these last 2 Phoenixes standing.
And it's so unfortunate for the Tiburones that right-hand Phoenix fell so easily and so early for them, because now, no matter where the pressure is put, which, let's face it, if I'm the Winter Dogs, left side Phoenix seems like a very easy place to put that pressure. It's already exposed, and well, it's nice on opposite side of the right-hand Phoenix, so you can let your fire minions push down, and that is where things get even more irritating if you're the Tiburones, because yes, you're not just worried about it. If you're in mid-Phoenix, you can send somebody over to right, they can clear a wave, bounce back, have no problem for the fight. Left Phoenix, it's a much bigger traversal, and no one really has that gap-closing ability. I mean, Cope can with that semi-global ult, but at the same time, you're going to force your hand. Either you're going in after you've used that ult to engage, or you're having to fall back with it and your ult is just wasted. So I think this is going to be a good spot for the pressure to be put on. The Tiburones are going to have to play a very, very hard game of decisions.
The Winter Dogs rotate Wowie to the left side to push up the waves that were already back towards their tier 2. And instead, the rest of the team will move forward to continue stripping the waves out. So now they can make this siege towards the left side Phoenix. Kirmi is all by his lonesome in mid, has 2 people trying to defend against him. Meanwhile, it's a 3v4 on this left side. Heed will jump on over, try and help them out, but the Phoenix is already down to half health. In the back line goes Aquarius, looking for Spreen, will find him with the ultimate and puts him well under half health. Kiermi tried to take him down and has the ultimate and the help with Aquarius to bring him out. Benny Q picks up 1 in the back line. It's a 2 for none so far. The walls come through. Heed has nowhere left to run. Wow, he picks him up. Aquarius gets the double, and it's only Renjaru to defend against the Winter Dogs as they look to close out Game 3 and maintain their top seed spot, taking them down. 1 more for the books for Benny Q to put a 4-1 on the Anubis and a 2-1 on the set.
And while they earn it the I want to say hard way, but they kind of made it look easy there in game number 3. I do still want to say it feels like a stolen win here because the Tiburones were winning so heavily in game 1 before they lost. They win so heavily, well, maybe not as heavily in game 2. I think the Winter Dogs get a very good set of fights in game 1, but then this game was just kind of a final stamp to remind everyone why they are right now currently not tied, are number 1 in the region, and it's because you can pull out the Anubis and make it look like that. It looks phenomenal.
It's not often you can pull out an Anubis in Game 3 and make it look as clean as they did. We're going to go ahead and take it to a break, and then we'll come back to close out this set.
I gave up dabbing for Lynn.
Cool. No more dabbing for Final. He looked at me and said, I'm going to be on that stage next year. I'm going to become a world champion.
the Winter Dogs will maintain their first seed for just a little while longer with a big win today here over Tiburones de Tijuana. They close out the set 2-1 and keep themselves only at that single loss so far for the season. I'm Jim Tucker, and joining me one final time here on the desk for now is going to be Gorm Miser. And Game 3, I don't know what it is about sets so far today. Game 1, Game 2 go a little bit longer. And then Game 3 is like, all right, let's just get this done and over with, boys. Let's just walk in. Let's get those kills, get that objective. Let's end this one out. A nice, quick, and decisive game number 3 here for the Winter Dogs.
And honestly, I think it is this weird balance of like, hey, you're the #1 seed for a reason, and they kind of showcased it, I think, in that last game, getting a lot of control, a lot of early game. I mean, that is, if you're going to win, especially with the lead they had, that's how fast you have to do it. We've seen a lot of these games where someone gets up that amount of gold, 14,000 or at least 10,000 early on, and then they kind of hold on to it for like another 15 minutes for some reason instead of being able to find the end of the game. That didn't happen this time around. They found their lead early on. They were finding tons of kills, really good clapbacks. This one, I want to say, was a little lucky there. Kirmi was just shy of getting killed off right there, and that really started to stack on itself. There were a good couple of fights afterward from the Tiburones, but nothing could really catch up to this Osiris. And I had said it, if you're first pick, you either have to step up and be amazing, or you're going to be another in a long line of disappointing Osiris performances that we had from playoffs. And yet, it wasn't the case. Kirmi stepped up and did everything that they needed to and more.
That was a way to put that one, I guess. But
go watch every Osiris game at playoffs and tell me they weren't disappointing.
Look, I can't argue stats.
Tell me Panatom in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue the numbers for when you're picking this god so many times and it's coming up as a loss so many times. It kind of just becomes this thing of, is Osiris really that good? Well, maybe down here in the SCC, he is just that good. 7-2-7 for Kirmi, 5-0-11 for Aquarius. We talked a lot about Benny Q, Kirmi, even Wowie thrown in there at 405, but Aquarius with this very silent 5-0-11 to kind of close the game out for it, puts out some big numbers for his team, puts out some big damage and some big CC. The fact that Benny Q only died one time during that entire game against that composition is a little telling of the synergy that Winter Dogs had when it came to these team fights.
And the confidence, I think, that they had. Because that Anubis, I mean, admittedly was locked in later in the draft, but they recognized that he wasn't going to be under a lot of pressure and that they didn't need to worry about it. So Benny gets away with having not only played the Anubis, but recognizing that nothing's going to kill me. Like, I'm going to be just fine. And is playing safe for a lot of that. There were a lot of moments in Game 1 and Game 2 where that Tiamat got caught out, whether it was just slightly too far forward. Never happened on the Anubis and made things a lot cleaner.
Well, let's take a look at the standings and see how things have kind of shaped up here after the first game of it, though a whole lot will not have changed amongst them. The Winter Dogs still will be sitting at that top seed amongst the standings for themselves, closing out 6-1 to end here in week number 7 of play. Tiburones, their position does not change either. They still sit down in the 5th seed at 2-5. But you talked about it very early on. It was the start of game number 1. You said, even if they lose, if they can make it look good, that's a good start for them. Yeah. Do you think that holds up here after this set?
Yeah, honestly, that was a really good performance for them, and I think next week we're going to see a much more successful Tiburones. Like, you take that performance and put it against literally anyone other than the Winter Dogs. Maybe Herculean Hooves, we'd have to test that one in the waters, but like pretty much any other team in the SCC, and I think they walk away with a 2-0. Well,
speaking of the Herculean Hooves, they're our next matchup here against the Sturdy Artisans, sitting 2nd and 3rd seed between each other. And that's going to have some sparks flying, I imagine. 4-2 in the standings for either of them. The winner of this one will move to 2nd seed, and then we'll have Average Joes and Sleekness later on in the week post-SPL. But for our final set of the day, to have Sturdy Artisans and Herculean Hooves, the two teams so close in standings and so close in performance. Look, we already saw 2 full sets of Game 3 from #1 seed. Now, look, this was a #1, and I want to say Goodnight Nick was like a 3rd or 4th, if I remember correctly, and then we had a #1 and a 5 bring us to Game 3. If this doesn't go to Game 3, I'd be pretty shocked to say anything. Well, we're going to throw it over to Dulcet and Mifflin after the break to bring us this action-packed set.